Okay, we're going to get started. So this particular webinar today, I think, is really an exceptionally important one. It's something that if you understand what I'm talking about today and you are able to take the advice I'm giving and take action on it, it really can change the direction of your career. This particular topic is something that I've taught to a lot of partners, that I've taught to a lot of associates, and that is something that has made people very successful and helped change kind of the direction of their career from where they were into where they're going to get. If you're a law student, it can help you a lot. If you're a practicing attorney, it can help you a lot. If you're a partner, it can help you a lot. Whatever you're trying to do, even if you're not practicing law, this topic can really help you. And depending on even whatever situation that you're currently in, it can help you advance tremendously. And this is a lot of the things that I teach are more related to specifics about how to do different things and stuff. But this one is actually a motivational type topic. And it's something that I think is very interesting and literally can change the direction of your career if you're able to absorb and understand the lessons that I'm teaching, which are fairly simple. But it's not something that everyone understands. So this is a live webinar. I will give the presentation, and then after the presentation, we'll take a short break, and then I'll come back and answer any questions that you have. It can be about this or really anything to do with your career. I'll be able to answer. The most successful attorneys in law firms are the ones that always show up. And it's never enough. Like, a lot of people think that if you go into a law firm and you just do the work and you exchange kind of money for doing the work, that's enough. And that's actually not true. The past it's actually probably 25 years, I've been speaking with attorneys looking for jobs on a daily basis. And then what people are looking for, the law firm, and also when you're working there, is they're looking to see if you're someone who's actually showing up. And I'll tell you what showing up means in a minute. But the attorneys that work in the best law firms and remain in the best law firms are doing a lot more than their peers. And they show up more often, and not just physically, which means going to the office when they can, meeting with people when they can, but mentally. They're showing up more than their peers. And it's something that they get better and better at. And if you work in the largest and best firms and want to stay there, or any firm for that matter, it's really about showing up. And this is really the entire game. It's not just in law firms, by the way, it's in all employers. And if you understand this, then you're going to be much, much better off than any of your peers. And you will pretty much always succeed in whatever you do. And what happens to a lot of attorneys is they stop showing up. And this happens sometimes very early in their careers, sometimes later, sometimes before they even start practicing law. What happens is they lose their enthusiasm often when they're in law school, and they stop showing up. And other attorneys are a year or two into the practice of law and stop showing up. Others stop showing up after 10 years when they get tired and they just give up, or they just start going through the motions. And there's no doubt that the practice of law can be very difficult. The hours are long. Sometimes the people that you're working with are unpleasant. The stresses of getting ahead and keeping business once you're a partner are exhausting for a lot of people. Some people don't get power from this sort of thing, that it exhausts them. And the same thing goes with law school. At every stage of the game, a lot of attorneys are finding that their peers are not really their allies. They're people that you may think are out to get you. They're competitive with you. And that can get to people. And in order to show up, you need to, in order to remain ahead, you need to show up. And all this is about showing up. I'm going to talk a lot today about what showing up means, but there's all sorts of systems within law firms that are arranged to make sure that people are showing up. So I'm going to talk now a little bit about qualifications and that sort of thing. And this is just one part of showing up. It's something that most attorneys don't have. So I'm just bringing it up first because it's something that comes in the beginning of your career. So I'll talk about that, and then I'll talk about a lot of other ways of showing up that aren't necessarily related to schools and that sort of thing. So the reason that you can get a job in the very best law firms when you're in law school, and then if you do well, or you're in a good firm and you can get jobs after law school with the same big firms for a while, is because you'll have a history of doing well, getting into the best colleges and law schools. What all that shows is that first of all, it shows you have the ability to take tests and do well. And these are aptitude tests, but it also shows you have the ability to impress others, which are professors, people that are recommending you, your teachers. And the same thing goes with college. If you do really well in college, it means you likely showed up and applied yourself. And the better you do in law school, it's the same thing. And while employers don't know it, they believe, and it's presumed, that you studied harder and you applied yourself more and you showed up more than your peers. As an aside, I remember when I was in both college and law school, I would be in these classes where I didn't think I was going to get the best grade because I hadn't done the best on my test. But I was always in class and I would always go and ask the professors questions and things. And that's a form of showing up, because it just gives you a face and it helps you do better. It's a form of showing up. If you don't have, and people that are good and get good grades show up. And so the presumption is, if you got good grades and you did well, that you're going to continue showing up after you're hired, and you'll figure out how to do it in the future. Grades, and that's in many cases, is an ability to show up to class, to study, to whatever. And law firms also like people that were summer associates, the best law firms, and had their first jobs with those types of law firms. It's a sign that you showed up and you pressed people when you interviewed, and not everyone went to the school was able to do so. That's good. If an attorney gets a good job in law school and then after law school, the presumption is they're able to sell themselves and with more enthusiasm than those who did not. And so grades, schools, your first jobs all show your ability to show up and play the game. And while this is just the first part of everything, showing up early and having a decided advantage when employers are evaluating who's likely to win the race early in your career. And these are all tests of your enthusiasm, how much you're in the game, how hard you're playing the game. And so what law firms are looking for, the best ones, is they're looking for people that have shown up, and meaning you've shown up in schools, you've shown up in the summer to get jobs, and you've done all of this stuff with your motivation. And the idea is that you're probably going to do the same thing in the future. I remember it was funny. I was taking an acting class years ago, but with this famous acting coach. And suddenly there's nothing I ever could have expected, but he just thought I was awesome and really good. But this is a famous acting coach. And then he introduced me to, what do you call it? Not agents, but a casting director, famous casting director. And she was like blown away by my performance. And I was like, this is crazy. And so because obviously that's not something I could do for a living. And so I said to him, why? This seems crazy. I don't think that this would ever work out. And I had totally been doing it for 6 months. And so people that figure out how to do well in something, whatever it is, if you do well in business or you do well, that they tend to also do the exact same thing no matter what they do. And I thought that was very interesting. So if you're someone that does well in things, and certainly I didn't decide to become a professional actor, but the idea was that you'll figure out how to do well in anything you do. And that's a really important thing to understand. And that was an observation that he had reached by being a famous acting coach, because he understood that's what happens to people. And if you look at a lot of these famous actors and actresses, by the way, they went to Phillips Exeter and then went to Princeton or went to Yale. It's very interesting when you start seeing some of their backgrounds. And these are people that just had a history of showing up. So I make that point not to tell you that I'm a great actor or anything, but to say that that's how a lot of the world evaluates people when they're trying to do things. What is it that they did in the past? So there's also a preference, of course, for attorneys who bill the most hours. This in law firms is the holy grail of showing up. It means everything. If you're billing the most hours, you're showing up the most. And this is just how, when you're young, even when you're a partner attorney, it's the value that you provide to law firms, and it's both at the associate and partner levels. All this shows, when you're billing a lot of hours, is it shows you have a tremendous amount of energy to give. You need physical and mental energy to bill a lot of hours. You're definitely showing up if you're doing that. You can't stare at a computer all the time for day in and day out if you don't have a lot of energy. And then you have to concentrate for long periods of time. That's not easy either. And if you have a lot of energy within you, then this is considered many times a good thing by law firms, because what that means is they are channeling that energy into profits and serving clients. And a lot of people never run out of energy as they get older, at least to bill hours. There are partners that I'm amazed that bill over 3,000 hours a year that are in their late 50s and 60s. And there are people like that. And if you have the energy to do this, then the law firm will turn into profits. And that's a good thing. It shows you're showing up. The other thing that's actually even more important, and this is something that I wish I could stress to everyone that works in a law firm or in any capacity doing anything, because this is what happens and why a lot of careers die very early and also later is the inability to be interested in what you're doing. If you're billing a lot of hours, the idea is that you're interested in what you're doing. That's what people believe. And if you are able to bill a lot of hours and it's fun for you, meaning you like the work, you like the ideas, you like the sort of thing, it's actually a good thing. And you can do a lot of things to be that way. You can talk yourself into it. You can say that I love this work. This is what I like about it. You can find the positive sides of it. Most people in law firms, a lot of them get distracted by people that say negative things about the type of work or don't like it. But if you're able to get energy from the work instead of getting drained, that's a very good thing. That means you're going to continually get better. It means you're going to be enthusiastic. It means you're going to find answers to things that others don't, because you're thinking about things and it's very good. The other thing that it shows when you bill a lot of hours is that the people inside the law firm are able to value you, and therefore, because of the work that you're doing, they are giving you work. They could give it to other people. If you don't do good work, then you won't be given work. And if you're doing good work, you'll be given more work. This is one of the signs of hours. It's not just that you have the stamina to build these hours. It's that people are giving you the work because the quality of the work and the enthusiasm and how easy you are to work with is something that it motivates them to give you more work. And there are attorneys inside of law firms that have because they do such good work, have tons and tons of work, and there are ones that don't. It's just how it's always worked. And so law firms don't view just the work you're doing as a sign of how many hours. They view it as a barometer of the quality of work. So if people are continually giving you work over and over again, you must be doing something. The other thing that hours show is that they're valued to people outside the firm, meaning the clients. As you get more senior, you're expected to generate work from outside the firm, meaning find clients. And as you do this as an attorney, when you get to be at a partner level or senior associate or counsel, clients will give attorneys more work if they believe that the attorney is providing a good value and giving them good solutions for the work that they're doing. So as an associate, if you're working for a partner, it's basically training to give good work and to be enthusiastic and to get more work from partners. So think about this. This is the tutelage that you have when you're working for a partner is no different than working for a client. So you have to get the client to give you more work. You have to do good work. You have to be worthy of getting assigned work. You have to be nice to work with. You have to take the client's side. You have to find ideas and things that they wouldn't normally. These are all things that a good associate does that you get better and better at, that also enable you to get work later on. And the better work you do, if you're doing good work for clients, meaning for the partner, but the client seeing your hours and the clients see the financial value for this, the more work they're going to give. And partners without a lot of business often don't have a lot of business because clients don't see the value in the work they're doing. It is interesting for me that, and this isn't always the case, but a lot of times it's the case when someone is like a counsel or a very senior associate and they're limited in their income and an ability to move up. It's often because they don't have a lot of enthusiasm for the work and the work, and they're just not fired up. And then a lot of hours means you're making the firm a lot of money. And if you're making the firm a lot of money, law firms keep people around that promote people who are making the most money because of their businesses, and they want to keep you. And the other thing that shows, and I'm not saying this is a great thing, but it shows you're willing to sacrifice your personal life for your work life. Obviously, if you are doing that, Now, not all people do this, but a lot of attorneys have been divorced more than a few times because they're not around. And if you're billing a lot of hours and willing to sacrifice your time to do this, it shows that you're showing up and have the energy and drive to do so. I did want to make a couple observations about this, though, because I've certainly written and given a lot of talks talking about people getting divorced and getting on drugs and having problems because of law firms. But there are a lot of people that don't do that and that are able to keep their wits and be very successful regardless. And it's funny, I'm actually meeting with a guy that I know. He's a partner in a very successful law firm. He became a partner when he was young and worked there for 10 or 11 years and was making incredible amounts of money, $5 million a year. It's just very hard to believe. And he retired when he was like 47 or 48. And I'm actually meeting with him this afternoon. But he was very interesting because when he was working in this really successful law firm, he would do things like go swimming a couple times a week and just in the pool downtown Los Angeles and come home at night and relax, make sure he went down every Friday and Saturday. So there are people that are able to keep things together. And he also got married and a lot of people, but you have to have a balance. And so if you get too sucked into this and don't have a balance, then the other thing that will happen is the people you're working with, even though you're billing these hours, probably won't respect you and you won't be that interesting of a person. It's important to make sure that even when you're following this idea, you find balance in your life and you keep yourself calm and you have contact with people and you don't let it destroy you. And I bring that up because I've seen so many people that succeed that way. And the ones that do succeed, by the way, and become the most successful are most often the people that have that balance and are able to have balance somehow by controlling their lives and because you're also evaluated for your personality, for your ability to connect with people, and all sorts of other things, because those are also very important. I'm certainly not recommending that everyone throw themselves into this in a way where you're ending up destroying your life and getting on drugs or whatever, because that's not the answer. And the thing about all this, it's important to understand, and this guy was one of the first ones that ever said this to me, is no one's ever going to tell you to slow down because it doesn't benefit them. So it doesn't benefit partners to tell you to stop billing 3,500 hours a year because obviously you're making the money. But so you need to put yourself in a position where you're not taking all that stuff so seriously and still having balance while getting along with the people you're working with. And the other thing that billing a lot of hours shows is that you have the ability to sell yourself. It's not just about your ability to do the work you're given. It's about being able to sell yourself, that you're the right person to do the work. And this means that you have the ability to get work inside and outside the firm. Attorneys that sell themselves will come to partners and others, and they will say, hey, I'd really like to do this. I'm interested in this for this reason and this reason. They don't just sit there waiting for work. They get the work that's interesting to them. It's the same thing with attorneys that get clients, outside clients. They do the same thing. They're able to get work from people by selling themselves. And these are all skills that matter. And think about that. This is another form of showing up. See, if you don't sell yourself and you don't to people that you're working with and to people outside where you're working with, you're never going to get anywhere. So this is something about showing up. The more you're billing, the more you're showing up. And as you get more senior and you're able to continually bill lots of hours and get clients, that's also about showing up. Attorneys with business are preferred because those that don't have business need to rely on others for work. They're not going out and being enthusiastic and bringing things in, and that's something that helps if you're able to do that. But again, having the billable hour, showing up and getting hours to bill is very important. In order to do that, you need to really think about this concept of showing up. So this is one I don't like talking about, but I'm going to talk about it because it's true. It's just how the legal market, at least in law firms, works. There's a definite preference for younger and fresher attorneys over older ones. I'm going to talk about this. It doesn't mean you have to feel like all is lost. This is just a preference, but it exists, and it's something that you need to understand. And every time there's an obstacle in front of you about showing up, which might be your hours, your schools, your age, like this is not meant to upset you. It's meant to show you what the obstacles are and why you may need to show up more and in more ways than someone that doesn't have these things. Being an attorney in law firms, I think in a lot of respects is no different than someone being, for example, a professional athlete in a physically demanding sport, whether it's football, hockey, or whatever. Most of the time, by the time an athlete is in their early 30s, they're not going to last much longer. It's not because there's employment discrimination or anything like that. It's just that they don't have the energy and the enthusiasm and the stamina or hope for the future by the time they reach that age. Just think about it. They've given everything they have and they're slowing down and it's not as much fun anymore. They're not excited about winning things because they think it's more difficult. And so it's the same thing with attorneys. As you get older and you're 6 or 7 years out, unless you have self-confidence and a lot of will, a lot of people will become disillusioned. It's interesting in a lot of law firms that I was working at this New York firm that was in their Los Angeles office, and they're out of business now, but it's called Dewey Ballantine. But they hadn't made any partners in the 15 plus years they'd been in Los Angeles in that office. And I remember one day I was talking to like one of the top partners there, and I'm like, this is crazy. And he said, the reason we haven't made any partners is because everyone leaves. They leave before we even have the chance to do anything. You have to have a lot of self-confidence. You have to have a lot of belief in yourself. You have to believe that you're going to succeed no matter what. You have to really believe in yourself and have self-confidence to succeed. You can't get disillusioned because all these people leave or nothing's ever happened. You have to really believe in yourself because anything is possible if you have that level of self-confidence. If you have that self-confidence, you're going to be able to push through and succeed anywhere. Anybody can succeed if you have enough self-confidence. The idea is that once you get more senior, that you're 6 or 7 years out, the firms do hope that you'll start getting clients. But the presumption is that if you don't get clients and you don't start doing that, you may have that level, no longer have that level of enthusiasm you do when you're younger. In a lot of cases, these law firms are right. People, not everyone, and again, this is not something that happens with everyone. It happens with a lot of people, and I'm just trying to make you aware of it. But older attorneys often get disillusioned. They think, what am I fighting for? This is impossible. Everyone's against me. But the hours are very high. The demand for business that I bring in business is difficult. There's all these political games, and they're seeing the worst in everything. And then they get to the point where they're like, I give up. I'm not having fun anymore. I realize this game's too hard to win. And they realize how hard it is to keep their jobs. They start looking for in-house jobs because they start thinking their time is limited. Now, all this, by the way, if you have self-confidence and the ability to push through, the ability to do well no matter what, then these things happen. And I had an interesting thing happen to me when I was. The idea is that the people that succeed, I don't know how to say this, but the people that succeed at the highest level often don't even accept the possibility that things are going to go wrong. And I don't know how to explain it, but I'm going to give you this example. I don't know that it's a great example, but I remember I had this advisor when I was in high school. I had another one when I was in college that just basically was like, this is where you're going to go to school. And I was like, but that's impossible. The school has like a 8% or 6% acceptance rate or something. And so he would do this with all his advisees. And it would basically be like, you're not considering the possibility that you're going to fail. This is what's going to happen. And this is what, by the way, the most successful entrepreneurs do. This is what someone like Elon Musk does. It's what, if you look at old videos of Jeff Bezos when he had a company with 10 people, what he would say. So the people that succeed don't even think about the possibility of not succeeding. But most of the world gets off track, doesn't give themselves enough self-confidence, doesn't concentrate on a goal. And so they think that they're just not going to succeed and they lose their enthusiasm. And one other thing I just want to bring up, because this is a big deal, and this I'm sure applies to some people that are watching this right now. A lot of attorneys, when they're young, especially ones that went into corporate related practices and corporate's been slowing down, are let go early in their career. They're let go when they're like 6 months in, they're let go when they're a year in, year and a half, and they're let go because the firm doesn't have enough work and they're just picking and choosing who they're going to keep there. And so those attorneys lose their positions. And what happens is very interesting. Those attorneys in a lot of markets like New York and the other law firms there just won't no longer be interested in them. They won't interview them. The smaller law firms won't interview them because they know that if they get a job there, they'll leave to go to a bigger firm that pays more, and then the big firms won't. But the big firms, I think the reason this happens a lot of times is because the firms start thinking that this person will have lost their enthusiasm. They're going to, when we hire them, there may be something wrong with their work because that may be why they were let go, but they're also not going to have the same level of enthusiasm, and they're going to be suspicious, and they may be a little broken and things. So you need to basically have confidence, no matter what happens to you, that you're going to do well. And the attorney that gets senior and has business is showing up. The other thing that happens too, I want to keep on this path, is that people have very hard things happen to them early in their career. Maybe they fail the bar a few times and get fired. Maybe they aren't able to get a good job when they're in law school and get a summer associate job. Maybe they don't have a good job when they graduate. But you have to keep your confidence up. You don't want to lose it. This is the dumbest thing you can do, because the confidence is the most important thing you have. And why would you let yourself be shook and not have that? And having business is important. Law firms will love young attorneys because the young attorneys will often approach their jobs with a ton of enthusiasm. They'll believe that success is possible. They won't yet have been overtaken by negative rumors and negativity that people that of their age and stuff have. They won't be impacted by it yet. They're still under the belief, because they've succeeded before, that they're going to do well. And law firms can channel that energy into them becoming better attorneys and them doing lots of work. But you have to understand that the game is very difficult. I've worked with people that are on this, again, that are 9 or 10 years out and have been billing 2,500 hours a year since they got out of school, are constantly told they're doing well, when suddenly out of nowhere, they're told they only have a few weeks or months to find a new position. Now, I want to be very clear that this does not happen as much as it used to. There are a lot of very good firms, like ones that are extremely competitive in New York and San Francisco, that will make people partners. Most people, if you stick around, that doesn't mean you're going to be paid a ton of money as a partner or even have equity, but they will. So you have to understand where you're working and what happens. But a lot of law firms are up and out. And the majority of the most competitive law firms are up and out. But again, a lot of them aren't. A lot of them are, this has changed quite a bit recently. But the main thing is that if you want to stick around in a law firm, you need to maintain your enthusiasm. You need to maintain how excited you are and all those things. And I was just thinking just now about, there was this guy at Dewey Ballantine from their New York office that was like a counsel, and 15 years out. And I just remember the people that are counsel at the most competitive firms. Dewey, I remember a counsel guy I knew from Simpson Thacher in Los Angeles. They're just they maintain the people that stick around a long time maintain their enthusiasm, and they want to keep contributing, and they bill hours, and they're easy to get along with, and all these things. So these are important for you to stick around. You need to maintain your enthusiasm. And there's so many people, like I talk to them all the time, that when things don't work out earlier in their career, just get bitter and they lose their enthusiasm, and they become very defensive and argue about every dime and want to get, and you don't want to get cynical. I don't know how to say this, but you can't get cynical, and you need to maintain your enthusiasm. And a lot of attorneys in the major markets are, as you get more senior, there's pressure. If you're not incredibly enthusiastic, not showing the right attitude, there's pressure to leave, because they want to bring in younger people who do have that level of enthusiasm. And so you need to follow the example of the people that do really well consistently in the firms, because in large law firms, because that they all, for the most part, without any exceptions, maintain their enthusiasm. They want work. They're appreciative of work. All these sorts of things. They want to continue learning. And if an attorney gets more senior, the reason is that their billing rate rises. This is the reason there's a favoritism for younger attorneys, and they become competitive with partners. So clients want to have partners do the work because they don't want to pay as much for someone that's a senior associate doing the work as they would a partner. And then partners also make more money when they do the work. So than if they give it to others. And this isn't the case at all firms, but just imagine, I'm just giving you an example of one firm I know. If a partner makes 40% of the money, or they're guaranteed 40% or 30% of their billings, if they do the work themselves and collect it, and they only get 10 or 15 if they give it to someone else in the firm. So that's 10 or 15%. So if they get, just hypothetically, if their billing rate is $1,500 an hour, they automatically get $600 an hour, or if they do the work themselves. And then if they give it to someone else, they only get 150 or something. So their incentive is to do the work themselves. And this sort of business model plays itself out at a lot of firms. And so law firms want people that are very hungry and want to get ahead. That competition benefits them. And so they need to have that level of competition, because that produces more hours, it produces more work, it makes the clients happier, it makes the associates more likely to try to impress the partners. And so everybody wants that dynamic in their firm. And if people don't have that and lose hope, then they become dead weight. And they'll bring morale down of those who want to bill a lot of hours or bill lower hours in the food chain. And it's very interesting. I have a lot of examples where people will show up in a law firm and have incredible qualifications. They might have been like a Sears Prize winner at Harvard Law School, which means the very top of your class, and worked at a great firm. And then suddenly they go into another great firm and they say, I'm a 6-year attorney, but I'm not interested in making partner. And even though they have these world-class qualifications, another really good firm is not going to want to hire them, because they're going to bring down the competitive spirit of the law firm. And the best law firms, by the way, that have been around a long time, they want everybody to believe they're going to be partner, and they want everyone to fight and behave like that. And so if you're not hungry and you're older and you are just more about doing the work than being enthusiastic, then the law firm isn't going to want anything to do with you. And so if you're senior without business and you don't think you're going to make partner and you don't want to do it, then the law firms are going to likely be very turned off. And in that system where the hungriest people keep rising and they bring in new hungry people, and the people that aren't as hungry don't continue to have enthusiasm and are let go, that system goes on at all the best firms, and especially in the largest markets, because the largest markets have a lot of people that they can draw from. So what does that mean? It means that if you're in a big market and the law firm needs to replace you, they have hundreds of options. Whereas if you're in a smaller market and the law firm needs to replace you, it may be difficult for the firm to find someone. And it's the same thing with large firms that pay a lot of money. They can always find your replacement. So it's just something to keep in mind. If you're in a big firm and you don't have a good attitude and you're not enthusiastic, the law firm's just bringing someone that is. And oftentimes that means someone that's younger. And so they like younger people, but many times because of that. And this isn't basically something I've already talked about. I'll talk about it a little bit more, but law firms definitely prefer people who desperately want to get ahead, meaning law firms like attorneys with the best grades and went to the best schools are obviously very motivated to do well. And they're trying to get ahead. It's not easy to get the best grades. It's not easy to get into the best schools. And it also shows that you're concerned about your pedigree and how you look. And you're going to dedicate yourself to this and have a lot of enthusiasm. And this enthusiasm, again, they want to channel into work and longer hours. A lot of attorneys are very motivated. Some of the best attorneys, like the ones that make the most money and have presumably the very good lives that I know, are personal injury attorneys that have been very successful. I can't believe how successful some of them are. And they didn't go to good schools and things, but they stayed motivated. They They decided they were going to succeed in the legal profession, even if they weren't getting hired. And so they went out and did their own thing. But for the larger law firms, if you have things in your background that show you're motivated, you're more likely to be hired than those who are not. They'll approve of people and they want to hire attorneys that have things in their background that look like you have a high degree of internal motivation. If you have a family that you need to support and you come across as someone that is supporting a family, or you have you have something that's outside of you. If you have a lot of student loans and mortgages, law firms love it when people buy houses and have those sorts of obligations, because they know that they need to work and can't just walk away. That there's sometimes people are from backgrounds that make them have to feel like they need to prove something. They may have grown up, poor, or unable to, with parents who couldn't support themselves or support them, or something that makes them need to prove something. I knew of one woman whose father went to jail for trademark infringement and not listening to going against an order. So all sorts of people and then that person became a trademark attorney. A lot of people have stuff to prove, and a lot of people are trying to advance themselves. So one of the types of attorneys, this is actually very interesting. So when I place attorneys, if I'm able to portray that attorney, this is something that you can do as well. If I'm able to portray that attorney as someone who has moved to a firm because they were trying to advance, get closer to their goal, and now they want to move and get even closer to the goal, or this firm's going to face what they want. An example would be like a corporate attorney that starts out working for small businesses, then tries to move to a firm where they can work for bigger businesses, and then wants to move to an even bigger firm where they can work on behalf of Fortune 500 companies. Like, that person's trying to advance and they're moving to bigger and bigger firms, and they have a goal. And so every move is not moving sideways or up or down. It's sideways or down. It's always going up. And those people get placed all the time if you can make that point. And often it's just subliminal. Law firms want to hire people where it looks like they're advancing and they're improving. And law firms love that. Or if it's better than where they're at in terms of the prestige level, and it's getting them closer to their goals. So if you have a goal, by the way, very few people have goals. Almost no one has goals. Having goals is incredibly important. I certainly have goals. I review them every morning. So you need to have goals. If you don't know where you're going, the problem is that someone else is going to choose your goals for you, and they're not going to be good. Right? You're not gonna have good goals if you're just taking what other people are giving you. You have to have goals in places you know where you're going, because if you have goals, then you'll start seeing the world in a different way. You'll see opportunities, you'll see things to avoid, you'll be excited, you'll know that you're going someplace. And that's one of the most important things that any person that I've ever advised or worked with or who's mentored me has always emphasized that. So any attorney that doesn't want to get ahead, the easiest thing you can do is not have goals. But again, an attorney that has a family is more likely to want to get ahead. They're not going to be able to save money as much. They're going to be motivated by supporting their family, and they'll have responsibilities. They'll have expenses will keep mounting. The children will get older, and then they'll want to go to college or whatever. And so the person's going to have expenses, and the attorney's going to need to work hard, and the attorney will want to get ahead. And if the attorney wants to get ahead, they're going to be more enthusiastic. They're going to give more. They're going to find ways to give and do better than someone that doesn't. And they're more likely to be able to improve from negative statements and things when they get discouraged, or when bad things happen, they'll improve instead of just climbing under a rock. They're going to do their best. And I used to interview with, and I still do, but work with attorneys who couldn't get jobs, and they went to the very best law schools in the country. And you may not believe this if you didn't attend one of these types of schools, but there are lots of people that come out every year. It could be Yale, Stanford, whatever. And then when you start getting into schools, even other schools like Duke, Michigan, lots of UCLA, lots of very good schools, there are people that don't get positions when they're in the summer, lots of them. And then there's a lot that don't get positions when they even graduate from these schools. You wouldn't believe it, but I'm telling you that I see this. And a lot of these people even have very good grades. And they're academically, they're very good. But what they do wrong is they go into their interviews and they just don't have any enthusiasm. There's no drive. There's just maybe they don't like law firms, or maybe they're just not, they've been sold the wrong way on law firms. I don't know, but they just don't have any enthusiasm. And they had these backgrounds that I'm saying were very important, but no enthusiasm or drive. Like you wouldn't feel good like giving them work. They might go off and say, all right, thanks. But this is the number one characteristic that they have. And the idea is that they may be academically talented, but all they're doing is showing up, but they're not really showing up. And you have to have something that motivates you internally, that makes you really want to show up and do well. When people like this interview with the best firms and want the job, people hire them. I mean, people hire people that aren't even suited for the job because of their enthusiasm. And you have to be fired up. And if you getting the best job is obviously, if it's very important to you and you have reasons to succeed, then people want to give it to you. And people that desperately want to get ahead will come across in interviews. It will often come across in their applications that they email a letter. It's just the enthusiasm when they come in is just palpable. They have energy. They want the job. They're confident they'll do well. And this enthusiasm is those that are hiring them want to see. Imagine how you would feel if someone came to you and interviewed for a position and they were unbelievably enthusiastic and wanted to do it. They said it was their goal to do the type of work at your firm that you were being hired. They were being hired for. That they just were incredibly excited about you and the firm, and then someone else that may have better qualifications that came in and was just bland and that wouldn't be good. I remember, this is just a quick story. I remember years ago, 15 years ago, I was interviewing recruiters, and a really well qualified recruiter came in, and she was from Harvard Law School. And then there was another one that came in that was from Southwestern Law School, which is a kind of a local law school in California. I think that a lot of very good people come out of it, but it's not a highly ranked law school or anything like that. And so the woman from Harvard Law School came in, and she was maybe 3 or 4 years out. And I interviewed with her, and she was just really not enthusiastic. Just, she'd said why she wanted to do the work, but it wasn't really connecting with me. And I knew she was just unhappy. And so then the person from Southwestern came in, and it was just incredible. She was just completely fired up. She knew about our firm. She knew about me. She was just very enthusiastic. And I invited her and her husband to a cocktail reception I was hosting for law firms or something. And she came and I was hosting that for law firms, a few people inside of law firms. And she came and she brought a bottle of wine and was just so excited. And so this sort of enthusiasm is something that matters. And it's huge. It's very important. And not a lot of people have it, but when they do, it really moves the needle, and it can make a huge difference. And if someone's hungry, and that all that hunger can be channeled in good work and hours, and those around the person are likely to be motivated as well. So that motivation and that enthusiasm is something that you absolutely 100% need. A lot of people don't have it, and having that enthusiasm makes a huge difference. I have so many examples of this that I could tell. I love these examples, but there's just so many. I've had people just show up in my office and say they want to work for me. And I'm like, wow. And my office, by the way, is not easy to reach and then people show up. I had one woman call me, and this is very funny. She said, my name is such and such. I'm a U.S. district attorney, and please call me back. And I was like, oh, crap, I'm in a lot of trouble. And so I called her back, and she said, and she was in another state, I really want to work with you. When can I come see you? And I said, I guess you can come on Saturday. This was Thursday. And she's like, how does 10 o'clock in the morning sound? And I said, sure. And I showed up at the office at 9:50. And she was sitting outside, all dressed up, waiting to interview. And this is someone that wanted to be a recruiter. And she ended up becoming unbelievably successful. She doesn't work with me anymore. But the point is, like, that's the idea of showing up. Like, you really want something. And this woman had never lost a trial. She was just incredible. That's how it works. If you have that kind of enthusiasm, you know what you want to do, you can do very well. And this is a big one that I think anybody that's in a law firm needs to understand. It's also something for anybody that's working in-house is an obstacle you need to understand. But law firms definitely have a preference for people who have never left the practice of law for another profession. So if you do things like that suggest that this isn't your priority and the most important thing to you, then law firms aren't going to like it. If you go in-house, if you decide when you're 3 or 4 years out, this is very common, that you suddenly want to go do a federal clerkship or something. Law firms don't like that. It's if you take time off to start a business, if you become a solo practitioner. Sometimes being a solo practitioner actually works, I'm not saying, but this kind of stuff suggests that you may not like working in a law firm, and it's pretty obvious. So what would you do if you were in a law firm? Would you want to hire someone that left the law firm environment and went and did something else? Obviously, they were not thriving or enthused by their law firm. So is that a good use of your time and money to hire someone like that? Think about what you would do. What if you were hiring, I keep giving these examples of doctors, but what if you were a hospital employing someone who's a brain surgeon, and the brain surgeon decided to take 3 years off and go work in, in a psychiatric institution, counseling patient, I don't know, just something that wasn't the exact same sort of thing, a different environment, or decided to go teach brain surgery or something for 5 years, not working in a hospital. People that do things like this, if you go to another practice setting or something, it shows that you may not like where you're at. And so if you need to know what a law firm is, there are people that go to law firms and never leave. Law firms are very efficient. They have their own ways of doing things. Working in a law firm is what it is. And if you're not committed to it, the odds are, if you're hired again, you will leave. And that's what happens. People that are hired from in-house environments come to law firms, and they typically don't stay long. They're used to a different pace. You have been the authority, it's just different. They don't succeed. So it's very rare, by the way, I've certainly placed a lot of them. I still place them probably several times a year. But the majority of the people that are in-house or come out of long stretches of government or had lots of judicial clerkships never last long in law firms. Law firm is a different environment. So they may be hired for some reason by a law firm, and it can work. But the idea is that most of the time law firms have learned, and they're smart, that when they hire someone from a different practice setting like that and the person comes back, they're usually not going to last very long, and they're not the best bets. It's just what it is. And the idea is, if you're not committed to working in a law firm and you weren't committed in the past, that you're probably not going to be committed to it in the future. Meaning you may be going into work in a law firm just because it's the best you can do. It's hard to get another in-house position. But once you leave, it's very difficult to come back. And there's something that you've already said you don't want about law practice. And law firms that know what they're doing want people that are all in working in law firms. And so once you return to the practice of law, the idea is you're probably, whatever bothered you, whatever made you leave, is probably going to be the same in the future, meaning you won't show up. And ones that leave, a lot of times attorneys will leave to start their own businesses. Those are some of the worst hires out there. They have this itch, they need to do something else. And so they leave the large law firm, and then they want to come back when it doesn't work. And so if you were a law firm, would you want to hire people that are behind the scenes thinking they'd rather do something else? It's just a bad idea. These people won't show up. And there's a huge danger that these attorneys, also people that start their own businesses and want to do that, law firms look at that as maybe this person's going to try to take my clients. I don't know, but there's a danger. Same thing with in-house. Again, people that do that typically want to be free of the billable hour, and that's what they say. And again, it's something that tests the ability to show up. I've given you a lot of reasons why attorneys don't like going in-house, but where the law firms don't. But they go in because they don't want to have the responsibility of building business. They don't want to have billable hours. They want to have better hours. And so why would you, if you're a law firm, want to hire someone like that? The government is often a bad idea. And I hate to say it. Now, I'm not saying that people don't get hired from the government. Certainly white collar litigators, different types of people in different government roles, people from the IRS, big positions there often get hired. And there are a lot of people that are in very high ranking administration, government administration, or the EPA and things can get hired. But for the most part, people that are working for the government have a very difficult time getting hired. And a lot of times people go to work for the government because if they're from a law firm, because they may be more interested in working from the government's point of view. They may want a slower paced lifestyle. They're not concerned with money. Sometimes attorneys go to work for the government right out of school without ever working in a law firm. And the government's different. I used to work in the U.S. Department of Justice, and by 5:30, you could fire a cannon down the hall and no one would, the hours and things are much different. You don't have to get clients. You're working with the government. Law firms want people that are going to show up and buy in the game. And so if you're not showing up, then that's obviously in a different practice area, something that also is a problem. And then this is another one. I just would warn everybody about this. This is something, unfortunately, that is often beyond your control, but something that you should be aware of. If you have gaps on your resume, meaning employment gaps, that's not necessarily considered a positive thing. It suggests a lot of things. None of these things are positive. If you have gaps on your resume, meaning you worked someplace for a little bit, then a couple months went by, then you're 3 months or 6 months or a year, it's very difficult for law firms to hire you. And most law firms believe that if you have that, you're never going to stay long if you're hired. A gap means a lot of things. Often it means you were fired for not showing up, meaning you weren't doing a good job, you weren't learning, you weren't doing good work, you weren't getting along with people, you weren't billing enough hours, you did something wrong. So that means you obviously didn't show up right. But regardless, it shows that the same thing may happen in the future. If you wanted to go off and do something else and rest, and the environment was too toxic, whatever, then it just shows an inability to show up in the right way. And if you take any amount of time off from work, meaning a few months or longer, attorneys that do that often even don't come back with a lot of enthusiasm. They realize often during their time off that there's a better life besides working in the office. Suddenly, a lot of people that do this find that they're so happy, that they felt so relaxed, that their life is so different, that if they come back, they do so without a lot of enthusiasm and don't stay. So these gaps are bad. It means showing up means always working. If you quit, the idea is that you've left the clients or the cases or matters you were working on. You've left partners behind. You haven't kept those relationships up. You're a lot of different things. So it's something to think about. If you have gaps, you should almost immediately try to get something. Litigators that are fired can often get clerkships fairly quickly, federal clerkships and things. You can, if you are a corporate attorney, you can, in a big city and you lose your job, it's often very easy to get a position in a smaller city. It actually works if you apply to enough places. So there's ways to avoid gaps on your resume. It's unfortunately not telling you about everything today, but not because I'm withholding anything, but there are tens of thousands of law firms in the country. So anybody that wants can get a position. If you're not getting a position, there's things you're doing wrong in your resume. There's mistakes you're making that you can fix with the information that I have on BCG, but you really need to avoid gaps. And then this is just something that's stupid, but it's true. Law firms have a preference for people that dress well, that are fit, and that sort of thing. You would too. So it's just imagine you're hiring a nanny to take care of your kids. One person shows up all frumpy, the other shows up looking like an English nanny. You would obviously all dressed to the nines and stuff. It's just how it works. You want people that are representing them in front of clients to look like the part. So I remember, this is a story I've told before. The most successful attorney, I was working as a summer associate in a big New York firm, and that firm we were having lunch or something with the most powerful partner in the firm that had this huge book of business. And he said, he was talking to everyone. He said, because of the amount of money I'm charging my clients, when I walk into the room, I have to look and act like the most impressive person there because they're paying so much money. Thought that point was interesting, meaning that was to him the secret of his success. I remember one time when I was at this Dewey Ballantyne firm, a very powerful partner in the firm asked me to go out to lunch with he and a senior associate to discuss a case he was bringing in. And he took one look at my shoes when he came by my office, and they were a little scruffed. And he said, "You should fix that and not make that happen again." And so this is just something that is important. Now, obviously, firms are casual. Like I'm dressed, obviously, very casual. But when you're working and looking at clients, you need to be as impressive as you can. It's a way of showing up. And I'm not saying that you can't be proud of your body and but the point is you need to try to dress well and take it very seriously. Law firms, if you look at their offices, are ridiculous. You can't believe how much money some of these firms are spending on their offices. And they're doing it a lot of times because they want to be impressive to their clients and the people that they're working there. And the best law firms, when they hire people, they like people that look successful. And it's just how it works. When you're working crazy hours and things, you would think, why is this important? But again, if you're able to do that, then it's a big deal. I remember once I had this student loan company, and there was this guy that would show up. Everybody was wearing T-shirts and jeans and so forth. And the most successful guy there that I still remember would show up every day in a bow tie and a suit and do this job that everyone else was doing, but was the most successful. And so he, even though there was no need to look that, especially in a job where you're just on the phone, that's how he conducted himself. It's how you show up. And it's just something that I would recommend keeping in mind, that if you keep yourself up and do well, then you will often do well. There's a quick story I'd like to tell that's fun. When I was in high school, actually before I was in high school, I went on this trip with this Spanish teacher, and he had been in Cuba in a prison. And he said that when he was in this prison, everybody around him was smuggling in drugs, feeling sorry for themselves, getting in fights, and not taking any good care of themselves in any ways whatsoever, and just being the dregs, living this life as a prisoner in Cuba. And he said that what he did is every day he would get up, he would do all these push-ups, he would shave, he would meditate and do all these things to really run around the yard, exercising, and do all these things to really keep himself up. He would make sure he washed his clothes consistently and all these sorts of things. And so he was in this horrible prison where people were dying and getting stabbed and everything. And one day someone came to visit him, and he went into the visitor's room, and there was a new guard or something, or it was a new that he had never had visitors a lot before. So when he was there, no one really recognized him. And when the visiting hours were over, he literally just walked out of the prison with the person that had visited him because he didn't look like a prisoner. He looked like someone that was different. And because of that, he saved his life, and he somehow got to the United States and became my Spanish teacher. So it's very interesting keeping yourself up and what it can mean and what it shows. And this firm I used to work at, Quinn Emanuel, had this dress code policy where you could pretty much wear whatever you want. You could wear shorts and T-shirts, and they didn't care if you had tattoos. It was just a really neat place. And this was a long time ago when that was completely rare, and people would smoke outside. But the point is that when they would interview people, people would show up. And if they showed up in a suit and tie and things, that was considered what was expected. Then people would always show up. Some people would show up in shorts and sandals and things. And those people would never get hired because it looks disrespectful, even though the firm, I'm sure they were hired on occasion, but most of the time they weren't because it's disrespectful. So people like it when you do things in that way. And then this is another one that I want to bring up, and I think this is also very important. This is something that applies to all firms, all places you work, anybody that you're working with, but law firms really do prefer those, and you would too, people that make others feel good about themselves. And think about that. There's people that that when you meet them, they don't make you feel good about yourselves. They do the opposite. They make you feel badly about yourselves, or they bring out your insecurities, or they ask you questions where they know that the answer is not going to make you happy, or they they talk about negative things instead of positive things. And this is a big deal. This is the difference between, and I'm certainly not saying that I'm an expert, but I believe in this greatly. It's something that is very important for your ability to succeed, for your ability to be happy. There's even, this is the foundation of a lot of self-help programs like that make people happy, is that if you make other people feel good, then they will like you and they will advance you and all this. And if you don't, they will want to avoid you. So it's just human nature. There's even, I know it's the prayer of St. Francis or something that talks about, and I'm not going to make a religious thing here, but it's one of the most famous prayers in Catholicism or Christianity, I don't know, but it's about, you don't tell people your problems, you listen to problems, you don't expect people to love you, you love them, and all these sorts of things. And so if you make people feel good about themselves, then they're going to want to work with you. They're going to want you around. And so you have to make people feel good about themselves. You can't, if you think something, like you look at people in a negative way, then they're going to pick it up. And so you need to make people feel important. You need to make them feel good. It doesn't mean you have to give them fake praise. You need to give them genuine praise, but you need to make people feel good. You don't need to do things that are not honest in nature, but you need to be pleasant. And if you don't make the people you're working with feel good, meaning that they're important, that their work's important, that their job is important, that you're enthusiastic about their work, that you respect them and you think they're a big deal. And if you don't make them feel their work as a priority, then they're not going to want to give you work. So think about it. You have to make people that you work with feel good about themselves. You have to look up to people that are your superiors. When you study like famous people, like Henry Kissinger is a good example. Like he had an incredible skill, he still does, but of networking and stuff by making people that he met feel very important and good, understanding their good qualities, bringing those out, getting them to talk about things that they liked and do well. Even some horrible people in history, like Lenin was able to do that with people. So this is what the most successful people are able to do. They get people to like them by bringing out the best in them, by making the people feel respected, by connecting with them in a very subtle way. It's something Bill Clinton did. All these people that become very successful many times are experts in this. And because of that, people want to help them. And so your job really as an attorney, if you become very good at this, you do this with clients, right? You do the same thing with clients, but you also do this with the people that you work with. And a lot of people believe that their job in a law firm is to just show up and do the work, and that's it. They're just machines and they're hired for their mind and they show up. But if you really want to advance, you'll learn this stuff and you'll take it seriously, because if you're able to show up, then people and act like you're there to do more, then people will respect you and they'll want to give you more work. How would you feel if every time someone asks for you to do something that you were negative about, or you're like, okay, and you just, and someone else responds, that's a great idea, I'll get on it right away, and that kind of thing. You would want to have that people there. And you need to feel people value, you need to make people valued. You need to make partners feel like you really respect them and like them. And that makes them feel good about their work. I remember when I was clerking for a federal judge, there was this woman there was a U.S. attorneys in the same business same office building, and this U.S. attorney woman came by and talked to me, and I wasn't interested in being a U.S. attorney. It's just not something that was on my radar at that point. But I asked her some questions and made her think it was really cool, and then she started acting like this is something you really want to do. It's really hard, but she actually became like my friend just because I was telling her how much I admired her and her work. And when I say she was my friend, we weren't friends, but she just felt very good towards me. And that's what you need to do to people. You need to make partners feel like everybody you're working with, clients. And people that get fired a lot of times don't make the people around them feel good. People that don't get jobs after interviews do the same thing. They don't make the people around them feel good. And you need to make sure that everyone you're working for feels valued and good. Like they give you things, they give you things to do and you make them feel good. They're just basically, that's what they're doing. And clients, you have to remember, always have lots of choices of who they can give work to. And so they're going to give work to the people that they like the best. I remember I was talking to, this is just on Friday, this person that was interviewing one of my candidates. I sent him an email saying, thank you And he sent back this long email. Thank you for interviewing this person. I'm excited about them. And this is something I try to make law firms feel good that are interviewing their candidates, because they're more likely to use business. But anyway, so he emailed me back and said that I was his hero, and not hero, but that he really admired me, read all my articles, he followed my career and all this stuff. And when I talked to him on the phone, I was like, sure. And so I did a Zoom call with him, and I was asking him, because he had a very small law firm with just him and one other person. And I said, what do you think about recruiters and stuff? And he said, I'm very small. I typically don't work with recruiters. I don't do a lot of hiring. But in your case, I want to work with someone that I like. And that's really, otherwise, I might just not hire, or that sort of thing. So it's people want to work with, whether it's a client or it's a firm, they want to work with people that they like. And you would too. Think about it. Like partners that get a lot of business too, by the way, like they get business because they find people and they make those people like them. They don't just come and say, hey, I want to do work. They come and say, hey, I'd like to come by and learn about your business and what you're doing. And if you ever have anything, I can give you advice about it. I'm not looking for business. I want to, but I'd love to learn what you do. And then when the person tells them about the business, you act enthusiastic and like you like them, and you get this, and you give them a free article or papers or things that you know about it. And you just sit there and you make people like you, because if people like you, then they're going to want to work with you. And if you just can say, hey, I know you have this case, can I work on it with you? That's different. That making people like you first is important. So I just want to bring that up, because I think that this is one of the foundations to succeed in a law firm, and also as an attorney in any business you do. This is another one it's a big deal. I shouldn't talk about this, but I'm just trying to help you as a recruiter, that law firms really do have a preference for people that have had the fewest jobs. People that have the fewest jobs, what that means is that you typically are someone that is showing up consistently, and you keep doing so. So you can commit to one place. You're not interested in moving around, and you're just showing up. And the thing about, by the way, when you start looking for a job and you're another job, at that point, people start disconnecting. They're not as enthusiastic, and all these things are important to understand. So if you had several jobs, what that means is that you're unlikely to ever show up and commit anywhere. So you'll show up, and then you'll be looking for another job. You're not going to ever commit to wherever you're going. And you're just not showing up wherever you go. You're showing up partially, but you're not showing up completely. And so that's not a good sign. And as a general rule, if you demonstrate a lot of stability in a place, then that means that you're continually doing the best, and you're more likely to be successful in the long run, no matter what you do. And law firms are different. Although if they believe you're going to stick around over the long term, you're much more likely to get hired. So if a law firm is choosing between two people to work there, the one choice might be an attorney that has great academic qualifications and has worked at 3 really good firms, and then one attorney that has not quite as good academic qualifications, and let's say that's 5 years and has only been at one firm. Any law firm and doesn't have, and maybe that's not as good of a firm, most law firms, almost all law firms that know what they're doing, are going to choose the person that's only been at one law firm. Because the idea is you get into a firm, you will basically figure out if you're a good attorney, if you have the right kind of interpersonal skills. All sorts of bad things will happen. People will leave. The law firm will be stuck in some scandal, whatever. But you'll stay and commit. And that's good for the clients. That's good for the partners you're working for. That's good for everybody. And you figure out how to make things work. In contrast, a lot of people at the first sign of trouble will jump ship and go somewhere else. And so if you're able to stick around, that's a big deal. And your ability to commit shows you can deal with different people. You can deal with different working conditions. And you're doing work that's good enough that people aren't letting you go, that they're keeping you around. And that is very important. So my point to you is it's good to move firms if you're moving to a better firm where you're going to basically have more stability, or if your firm really is in trouble. So obviously what I do is help people move firms, but at the same time, you need to realize that it's very important for you to be able to commit to wherever you're going if you can, because doing that is really going to make you much more marketable and a hot commodity on the long run. And then having confidence for the work you do and those who do not. So you need to have confidence. Confidence means a lot of things, but when you get an assignment, if you can do it, then you typically will figure out how to do it. If you're a junior associate and you get an assignment from a partner and you don't know how to do it, you should find a senior or mid-level associate to help you. You shouldn't be afraid of taking things on if you're asked to go to court or deposition or show up for a deal and help. You shouldn't never act like you're afraid. You get things done. So there's certain people that are assigned things and get things done. There's people that are assigned things and are afraid to get them done. And you have to be someone that can do stuff. There's on my blog, which is harrisonbarnes.com, there's an article that I wrote and also this book called A Message to Garcia. And it's very interesting. It discusses people that succeed in the most competitive legal environments from those who do not. I think this was given to all the soldiers in World War II or something. It's a very interesting book. But essentially what it says is this person, maybe it's World War I don't know, but this person needs to get a message to someone to Garcia. And so they basically are going to drop them off in a boat in Cuba or something and say, go get this message to so-and-so Garcia. And the person says, great, I'll do it. And so the person goes and they know that this person gets done whatever they're given, they get it done. And they said, if we gave it to anybody else, the person would say, I don't know where they are. How can I do it? It's countries of war. I know all these different mistakes, or I'm too tired, or I'm this. Where this one person, they give the message, they give him their assignment, and he says, no problem, and gets it done and delivers a message to Garcia. So this is the kind of person that you want to be. If something's asked of you, you get it done. You don't figure out excuses. You don't say you're too tired. You don't say whatever. You get it done. And a lot of attorneys, old and young, and regardless if you're an attorney, express all sorts of reservations about doing different things. And you need to be someone that if someone asks you to do something, you get it done. There's no excuses. You don't have alibis. You just get things done. And these are the people that typically get the best results in transactions and litigation and other products, and those who, people that win do not lose. I had an interesting thing happen. I hired a recruiter. This is probably, 24 years ago or something. I don't know, but it was a long time ago. And when I was hiring this person, they said something like, I said, if you do okay, if this can happen, I'm not going to just do okay. I'm going to just knock it out of the park. And I never failed anything. I'll get it done. Sure enough, and a lot of people that I hired, that didn't happen. So he just was incredible. Like just did incredibly well. And that sort of self-confidence can really make a difference. You have to be able to get things done. He figured out how to get things done. And so if you're constantly showing up, then you're able to get things done. And showing up is about doing more than what's asked of you. It's about not asking questions and being able to figure things out. It's about being committed and knowing that you're going to do it and not getting distracted. And basically, whatever you get, you're committing and applying yourself to it. So this has been a lot of stuff we talked about today. I'll just talk a few things about conclusions. I think if you understood and took notes or listened to what I was saying today, it really can make a major difference in your career, your ability to succeed, in whatever you do, even if it's practicing law or it's doing something else. These are the qualities that I've seen have helped a lot of people. These are the qualities that I've seen over 25 years talking with attorneys in very successful high-level positions and those that are unsuccesssul, the difference between what makes people successful and happy and what doesn't. So this, I really hope that you were able to understand this today and what I said. If you absorb this information, just like a lot of the things I'm talking about, but this sort of information can literally change the course of your career and life if you understand these things. And I work obviously and talk to lots of very successful people. And this is what I've seen that they do. I've seen that they do this in business groups that I'm part of, like people that have these incredible businesses, that this is what they do. People that are far more successful and better off than I am do these things better. Showing up means a lot of things. It means doing what's asked of you. It means looking the part. It means being enthusiastic. It means not quitting when others don't. It means doing the best you can in everything that you have. And a lot of attorneys believe, and I've seen this a lot, they believe that all they need to do is just get the work done and bill their hours. And that's their main challenge, is just billing the hours, doing what they're given, doing the minimum. And if you want to work in the best law firms, you're going to come across as someone that's going to do more than that and more than your peers. You're going to do it physically and mentally. You're going to show up more. You're going to advance and go the furthest. This is what it takes. It's not like you're the smartest. It's not that have the best qualifications. None of this matters. It matters to how you show up. And again, you can show up in a lot of different environments. You can show up being a personal injury attorney. You can show up being an immigration attorney. You can show up being a trust and estates attorney. And it doesn't have to be in a large law firm. It can be as doing your own thing. But showing up is what makes people successful. If you see personal injury attorneys out there barking on TV and trying to get people to work with them, and they're showing up, they're all in. You understand showing up, and it's going to make you very successful. And not showing up in whatever you do, is going to really make a difference. And you need to find an environment, in-house, the government or whatever, where you're not expected to show up in the same way. I'll tell a quick story just before we take a quick break and questions. I learned about the importance of showing up very early. So I had this asphalt business in Detroit, but it was, I did most of my business outside Detroit because there wasn't a lot of people willing to pay for Detroit itself. But I had this business, and most of my competitors would do things like, for residential work, they would put flyers in mailboxes and hope that people called. For commercial stuff, they would do the same thing. They would cold call businesses and then go give estimates. And so this is just how the business worked for my competitors. So I started out doing that, and I realized that I would get a call from someone and they would get 3 estimates, and I would be one of the estimates, and I might get chosen, I might not. And generally I wouldn't, because I was the youngest and didn't look as professional. But then I started doing something that was unusual. I started dressing up. I would put on a very nice shirt and very nice slacks, and I would use usually a parent's car that was much nicer than my own. And I would drive, and I would stop and I started off doing residential work. I would stop at each house and tell them that I was going to be in the neighborhood the next day. I'd love to do their work, and would they hire me to do the work, because I was only going to come through the neighborhood once a year, and I was well-dressed, I was well-spoken, I had professional brochures. And what I realized very quickly is when I did that, I would go to 5 houses, and 2 or 3 of them would agree. And pretty soon I had this giant business I thought was pretty big in Michigan, where I had a lot of people working for me, I had nice trucks. And I only did it in the summer, keep in mind, and where I was doing so well that I really could have stayed there and done that, and probably ended up making a much better living than I would have gone to law school. But the point is that all I did was show up. I showed up like looking good. I showed up being enthusiastic. I showed up just ready to work. And that's, people hired that. Whereas if I had to do it the other way, like everyone else was, they weren't really showing up. So showing up, incredibly important, and something that can make a big difference. So I'll take a quick break right now. When I come back, I will take questions, and you can certainly ask questions about anything you want. It doesn't have to be about this presentation. Again, I think this presentation is very important, and I hope it helped you, but then I'll take questions. All right, so give me just 1 second. So one of the things too about asking questions is you should feel free to ask questions about anything that you may be wondering about. And the reason is because a lot of times things that you may think are dumb questions can actually help a lot of people. So I've noticed that many times. Oops, sorry. So we're back. But I did want to tell everyone that you should feel free to ask questions about really anything that you have. Many times questions that you may think are dumb or you don't want to ask are often the best questions and can help a lot of people. So it doesn't have to be about this. It could be about anything questions you have. And I wouldn't consider myself like a genius with any of the stuff. I've just been doing it for so long. I'm committed. I've been showing up. So I've learned a lot about the kind of things that work and don't work. So I think it can be helpful for you to hear a lot of these things. Okay, so this is great. So I'm going to start with some of the first questions, and you just see her. I answered this first question here. Looks good. Okay. Hi, Harrison. I'm on the heels or back-to-back setbacks in my first year of practice. I started out a small firm that let me go because business dried up in general litigation. I managed to join a large labor and employment firm, which I thought was my big break. I went from having no work to being on the rise at my new firm, billing 200 plus hours. Wow. Each month and making a lot of connections. This was at a branch of a national labor employment firm. I had friction with my supervising branch office partner and was worried about the high turnover despite working well at this firm. I started looking at new positions. I interviewed with several competitors. Now this week I lost my job. An important partner came to me and when I couldn't handle 2 trials at once, my branch partners didn't protect me. Now I feel cut off at the knees. The partner threw me under the bus, told me I was hard to manage. Now I feel cut off at the knees, devastating, don't know what to do, and look unemployable. Okay, so a lot of people come in and they think because they lost their job and things, they're unemployable, and that's just crazy. So the first thing is legal career and I'll just make sure you understand this, and it's important for everyone to understand that has early setbacks. Legal career can last between, I guess it'd be for 23, if at 23, or no, I'm sorry, 26, at 26, expect to be practicing another 50 years. So this is how it works. People practice. You can certainly practice 20 years and retire or whatever, but a lot of attorneys practice well into their 70s, and but you won't slow down. People are living longer than they ever have, and will continue to live longer. Just because you have some early setbacks, regardless, even if you have a setback 10 years in, it can always self-correct. So I'll tell you a quick story about myself in my practice of law. So when I got into my first job after working in the summer, I went to work for a federal judge. And I, at the time, because I'd come out of a series of, I was very astonished by what I considered at the time conservative this person was. And then he was very concerned with making sure that there was 0 typos and things. And because I wasn't on his same page politically, which he picked up very quickly, that he started, I thought, looking for small errors in my work to just, but he was just being himself. He wasn't doing anything wrong. And I was doing a lot wrong by making the fact that I didn't quite identify with him politically and making a lot of mistakes. And that is a mistake. I should have just kept that crap to myself. The other thing I made a mistake was when I was there in the beginning, I did make typos and things, and not serious ones, but enough that it upset him very much. And I got to the point where I was not making any typos and doing incredibly well with work. It made me paranoid about not producing perfect work. But when I was almost a year into the clerkship, it was pretty clear that we just weren't getting along. And if I stayed there any longer, I risked losing my job. And so I went to him and we mutually agreed that I would leave. He was very happy, I could tell, with that decision. And so pretty much, I'm not saying I got fired, but pretty damn close. And I only did that because I sensed that just based on the atmosphere and everything that I was going to lose my job. So I learned from those mistakes. And so when I got to my next job at Coin Emanuel, I just was hyper about not making any negative feelings known, by making sure I didn't make any typos. I did perfect work by being supportive and enthusiastic and all these things. So I learned my lesson. It's a lot of what I'm teaching today. I'm certainly not perfect. I've made a lot of mistakes and lost jobs too. And that, by the way, I'm telling you, I basically got fired. I didn't get fired, but I was going to get fired. And so I made some mistakes. My mistakes were not being negative, having negative feelings about the judge, him picking up my negative feelings, all these sorts of things that made me a freaking liability and someone that had no business working there, because I wasn't supporting the person that had given me this clerkship when they got tons of applicants from University of Michigan and all these local schools, and I got it. And so I was very lucky. So if you get a job with someone, regardless of who it is, you need to be appreciative. You need to be manageable. You need to do what they say. You need to try to do the work quality that they want. and you need to really get all over it. And you should not have friction with anyone. There should be no friction. This is the mistake that junior associates make and senior. You work for someone, there's no friction. There should be none. Like, you do what they ask you to do. You're learning. You're not right. You're an apprentice, and you only stay an apprentice as long as you do the kind of work that people want and you do a good job. So you have to be as focused on doing a good job for people and as possible. You cannot let your personal feelings get in the way. You can't let your judgment about what they should be doing with a client get in the way. You can't get a judgment about how they should be doing anything. It's not your responsibility. Attorneys that get fired early in their careers, always the number one thing that I see that happens is they think they know better, or they think they call the person they're working for, I don't know what's the word, but doing the wrong thing or whatever. They judge the person and they just get eaten up alive. You cannot do that as a young attorney. That's some of the biggest advice I can give you. So that's great. You got a job with this national labor and employment firm. You are certainly not, by any stretch of the imagination, your career is not finished. That's just absolutely ridiculous. Again, you said here you're worried about high turnover. That's not your problem. Like, you have to put your head down and not worry about high turnover. You just do as well as you can. You don't need to start looking for new positions because there's high turnover. You need to commit. The problem with looking for new positions, there's a couple ways to look for new positions. If you look for, and again, I'm not trying to promote a recruiter or my business. You can look for positions in a lot of ways. If you just start sending out random resumes, sometimes if you're working for someplace already, you have to be very concerned about the people finding out. It doesn't happen in large markets. Typically, if you're in like New York, Chicago, or Los Angeles, or whatever, Miami, or even Memphis, or large to medium-sized markets. If you start sending your resume around in smaller markets, it can often get back to your firm, because these people in smaller markets they don't receive a lot of resumes. So that it's just, you have to be careful in smaller markets. Typically, when you use a recruiter, which again, it's not something that everyone should be doing, but law firms won't give you problems because if the recruiter, they screw, the recruiter will stop sending people. But there's just a lot of things that can happen. But you should not always be on the lookout for a job. You just need to do your best to do where you're well. I don't like the idea of being hard to manage. If you read, there's an article that I wrote, there's 5 things that law firms look for when they're hiring any employer. They look for, can you do the work, which most people can do the work. And I want everyone to understand these reasons. I talk about them a lot. There's a whole series of articles on BCG where I talk about each of these in depth. But this is learning these 5 things is some of really the most important things that anyone can learn to succeed. Will you do the work? Will you do the work long term? Can you be managed? Do you want the job? So these are the 5 things that law firms look for. Doing the work, most people can do the work. You have to learn how to do that. Doing the work long term means, does it look like wherever you go, you're going to commit? So law firms will look at that very closely. Most people, not all, can figure out how to do the work. Not a lot of people look like they're going to do it long term. So here you lost your job, and then you got a new job, and then you didn't commit long term. So that's not a good thing. For some reason, you couldn't be managed. So that's not a good thing. And then the other is that then they didn't like you. So because of whatever. So these things these are really the 3 reasons why I believe you had problems in your job. So this is something that goes for everyone on this call. These are very important things. And this is what I've come up with in terms of 25 years of experience watching what makes people successful and what doesn't. So if you look like you're going to do the work long term and you're going to commit, then people are going to give you more and more work. They're going to feel secure with you, because it costs money for a law firm to let someone go and have to hire a replacement. Think about how much work that is. That means they have to spend all this time interviewing. That means that they have to not only do they have to spend time interviewing, but then they have to, they lose people doing the work. So it costs them money with their clients. It's a big deal when they lose someone. If a law firm's charging, most law firms, even if you work even 800 hours. You're not costing them any money. So the law firm, when they let you go, it's a big deal. They have these reasons. And so it may be that once you commit, they're less likely to let you go. And you need to be manageable. That's very important. Being manageable just means you ask them to do something, no problem. You get it done. You do whatever you say. So I would do a search for a message to Garcia. What's it called? A message to Garcia, Harrison Barnes. So that's harrisonbarnes.com or whatever. So this will show you some of the things, or we'll talk to you about some of the things that you can do to be much more effective in your work by really just being able to be managed, doing the things you want. And there's a lot of articles about being managed, but everyone needs to be managed. You need to be every president, every businessman, everybody knows has to be managed. And then wanting the job, that's important when they're interviewing, and then being liked. So people work with people that they like. So the point is, you're not unemployable. If I was you, here's what I would do. If I was you, I would go I would apply to small labor and employment firms. Let me see. Small labor and employment. And another thing you could do that would be cool is you could find plaintiffs labor and employment, and there's a bunch of them, and say that you left because you were more interested in doing plaintiffs labor and employment. And people that do this, by the way, can be very financially successful. So those are just some ideas that I would give to you. But anybody can find positions. It's not really that difficult. Let me just see. I don't want to make some mistakes here, but let's see here. Okay, but if you do a search like on Google, and you just say any city, let's just talk about any market. It would be like labor and employment firm, labor and employment attorney, or Madison, Wisconsin. I mean, it doesn't really matter anywhere. You're going to find tons of places, and they're all over. Look at this. There's just tons of them. So any market you're in, you can find plenty of people to look for. You're not unemployable. Look at this. There's just Madison, Wisconsin. They're all over. There's tons of them. Anyone, 2 or 3 pages, but anyone who wants to can get a job. You just have to do searches. And this is a very simple thing for anyone that's on this call that thinks that it's going to be difficult. Labor and employment attorney. Let's find another random market. How about Tuscaloosa? I don't even know how to spell it. Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I don't even know, is that a city? I mean, now any place yeah, here we go. People in Tuscaloosa. So it's just, they're all over. It doesn't matter where you are. You can find plenty of jobs. It's just, you just have to, and what would you do? You would contact these people and say, yeah, I want to be a labor and employment attorney with you. I'm interested in these people. If you do that, you'll be someone that wants the job. They'll like you because you're approaching them. You can do the work because you've been at a large law firm, and all of a sudden you look like a very good hire. So everyone needs to understand these things. By the way, if you do a search, and this is something I've been advocating for a long time, 85% of the placements that our company makes, I want you to understand this, 85% of BCG's placements are with firms that don't have openings. So why is that important? That's important because if the firm doesn't have an opening, you are the only applicant. You're flattering them because you're interested, so they like you. So these things. So they like you, you want the job, and they like you. So these are 2 things right here. So you have to maximize all these things in your search. So again, like if you go after firms, if you just apply, like you're saying you're unemployable, sure. If you want to apply to job openings, just job openings, and you think that someone's going to hire you for any type of job just because you're going to get hired, no, they're going to hire someone that's employed before you. Wouldn't you? That's what they do. But if you just go and you approach people this way, this works. I've gotten tens of thousands of people jobs. Now, I'm not just saying to use Google. I have all these other lists that we build, but tens of thousands of people I've gotten jobs doing things this way. If I just relied on openings, they never would have gotten jobs. So this is something that works. It can change your career, it can change your life. It's very simple. It's not something that people think of, but just applying to places that don't have openings, huge. It's changed the careers of so many people I can't even imagine. Changed my career, but no one does this. Everyone thinks you need to do things like let's go to Indeed or Law Crossing and apply to jobs. That's what people do. That's up to you. It works. You can get jobs on Law Crossing because it's a subscription site. Not a lot of people are looking at those jobs. They're willing to pay subscriptions, and they're from places you wouldn't normally see. You can also get jobs on Indeed, but everyone's applying to those jobs. So if you're trying to apply to places that everyone's applying to, it's not going to work. So I hope that advice helps a little bit. Okay, this is a great question. In your experience, have you observed any instances where attorneys from non-prestigious schools outperform their counterparts from Ivy League institutions and law firms? Yes, I actually see it every single day. I see it every single day. So absolutely. So why do I see it? How does it work? I'll explain that to you in a minute, but I see it literally every single day. So what I do is I review resumes all day, and a lot of people apply to send their resumes to BCG, tons of them. And I'm not saying that in a way to brag. I'm just saying that a lot of people apply to our firm, and I review personally every resume that comes in. It takes me quite a bit of time every day because but anyway, it's when I say it could take hours, but I review every single resume. So typically what happens is I'll see a resume from someone that went to a bad law school, meaning one that I've heard of every law school, but some of them I hear about them like a few times a year, and then they'll see they're at a great firm. I will presume many times that person must be like a staff attorney or contract attorney, but a good portion of the time, meaning probably 30% of the time, the person is a partner or an associate or something at one of these law firms. And they went to a law school that was not great. Sometimes they did well, sometimes they didn't. The people that didn't do well, you look at them and they're just beaming with enthusiasm and excitement. And many times they're just, and then the people that did do well are also very enthusiastic. But the point is that law firms will hire people that look like they're going to commit. So think about it. If you're from a poor law school and you get a job at a really good firm, you're probably going to freaking commit, and you're going to be like, this is what I'm doing. You're going to follow instructions, and you're going to do what's asked of you, and you're going to be easy to work with because this is your big opportunity. You're going to want the job because other people in your position, everybody would kill to have a job like that. And they're going to like you because you're someone that is very interested in working with them and happy. And so law firms, this is just how it works. And then if you do a good job of the work and you're learning and stuff, you can do very well. So my point is that what happens is a lot of people that go to the best law schools, a ton of them, they come out and they have a sense of entitlement. And so they don't commit to the work. Very common, by the way, for graduates of the top law schools, meaning Yale, Stanford, things like that, don't necessarily think that they're going to be doing this work a long time. They may think they're better than law firms. They may have other interests, but the people that don't always go to the best law schools are committing. And then they also, can you manage someone that went to a really good law school that thinks that they're more important? So this is the dynamics that happen. And then they may not want the job as much. They may think of doing other things. So these are all very important things. And you just need to understand that, yes, you can do much better coming out of a poor law school than someone that comes out of a good law school. I will said this before, I say it every week, but there are all sorts of practice areas where if you have a chip on your shoulder because you went to a bad law school and you really want to succeed, that can be like criminal law, can be personal injury, it can be all these different things that people just become incredibly successful without the top backgrounds. And yes, you can do very well compared to people that didn't go to the best law schools. It's actually very common for people. These are great questions this week, by the way, for people that didn't go to the best law schools to do much better. Okay, I just get that one, sorry. By the way, if you signed into Zoom, I know people are sometimes nervous. I won't, if it shows your name, which I don't see any, but if it shows your name, I never use people's names. It's all confidential. Let's see. Yeah, for all on the question from the new associate who just lost job again. I love practicing law and I love my practice area. Now, though, at two firms, I was not able to keep my job. My last job I lost despite being one of the most productive associates in the firm within 6 months because I did not have my supervisors on my side willing to protect me. I want to keep practicing law, but not only do I feel like it will be impossible to work at a larger firm again, I'm starting to question if I'm even barking up the wrong tree. Oh, here we go. I went to a top 10 law school and have strong credentials, and yet I can't get my career off the ground. what are the top most immediate steps I should take in my job search? How can I frame losing 2 jobs in such a short period of time to employers? Bad luck. Should I not even consider looking at firms? Do I need to go into different markets? Long term, are these setbacks a sign that I should not work in a law firm, that something is wrong with me interpersonally? Okay, so whatever your issues are interpersonally, or whatever problems you've had with law firms, are all just learning experiences. And so that's what everyone should understand at any level. There are a lot of things that people can do to make themselves more accessible. So everyone has to learn. Imagine if you were Donald Trump and had been sued 50 different times for election fraud, for overstating the value of your properties, for all these different things. Would you give up? Would you say, I'm not suited to be a politician or a businessman? So people that, and I know a lot of people hate Donald Trump, a lot of people love him. I'm not taking sides here, but I'm just saying that anyone that succeeds always has to go through a lot of hoops. And so you may have come out of a top 10 law school with I remember once placing a Harvard graduate at, I don't know, Littler Mendelsohn or something, and which is an awesome employment firm. He said, I don't understand. I'm the only Harvard law graduate in this firm. It's a huge firm. I don't see why I should take the job. And he'd been out of work for 2 years or something, or 6, I don't know, maybe a year doing something else. So there's nothing wrong with having lost jobs. You can work in other markets. You just need to apply to a lot of different places and learn lessons from this. You can't be upset. None of this is a sign that you shouldn't work in a law firm. It's just a sign that things weren't going for you and you made mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes early on. Michael Jordan didn't make the high school basketball team. There's so many. Lincoln lost every election until he was in his 40s and failed at everything. So it's just, you just have to learn lessons from all this and fix it. You should read a lot of the stuff about, let me see. I don't know if the same question will come back. Oh, okay. But yeah, so I hope that helps. And I think I see a follow-up question from this, which I will also try to answer in a little bit. I guess other people, let me see here. But yeah, I just want to come back to this question. You can look at different markets. You can look at smaller firms. You can look at very highly qualified solo practitioners. You can be honest about your mistakes, but none of this stuff in the long run really matters. You just have to pick yourself up. There was one thing I did want to say. There's a book, How to Win Friends. And the reason I bring this up is because there's a Warren Buffett who took up this course and called Dale Carnegie, and has it behind his desk and said it's like the best use of money he ever had or something. And again, I'm not promoting this class, or the book, but I do think learning about interpersonal relationships and stuff can be helpful. One of the things about going to a top 10 law school is a lot of people that do that do have a sense of entitlement. And attorneys that didn't go to schools like that often feel need to prove something, like I'm just as good, even though I don't know. And sometimes people believe that there's something special about going to a top 10 law school. One of the things I would say, regardless of where you went to school, if you went to a really good school, you shouldn't talk about it. I went to a highly ranked college. I'd probably tell someone where I went to college once a year, maybe, and only if they ask me. You don't have to talk about this stuff. It doesn't, again, I would not let that harm you, because a lot of people at the schools they went to get in their way. You have to do as well and even work harder than other people. Okay, what advice should I give to attorneys? Would you give to attorneys who want to excel in their careers and maintain a healthy work-life balance, success, especially in environments that strongly emphasize building the most hours? So you have to control, what you're willing to do and set limits. You have to set limits so you don't go nuts. And that would be what I would say. So what do people do that succeed in the long run? They figure out how to work exercise into what they do. They set aside time for family, significant others. They have outside activities that they allow themselves to do. So you have to build all this stuff in somehow and make sure that you have boundaries. So your boundaries shouldn't be negative, but you should have boundaries. And so if you can't have those boundaries wherever you're at, and you find that everything's or just overtaking, then you have to maybe go somewhere else or find a firm that has those boundaries. I remember, this is funny, there was this, and I had a law firm for a long time that I used to take care of all my personal and business work. But I once had this woman working for me. She was older and she'd come from this firm that was like a lifestyle firm. And she was in this huge trial. And the partner she was working for that started the firm and was like, this is my lifestyle firm, basically would go home on Friday and there was a trial on Monday. And he's, I'm done. I'm not going to work the weekend. So what about all these exhibits and stuff? And he's like, you figure it out. And so there are people that just set limits, and you can go someplace and you can set limits. It doesn't mean that's always going to work, but you have to, if you can, you need to set limits and or be in an environment that allows you to do that. There's no reason to kill yourself working in a law firm if it's not going to, if you're not happy and it's not leading anywhere. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I left the practice of law, which, and a lot of it was because I felt like I needed to set limits as one thing, but setting limits for me meant that I was not willing to do certain things, and meaning the work the hours and without knowing if I was advancing, and those are my problems. But it's something that you do need to set limits. Okay, let me see here. Okay, let me see here. Okay, let me just see here. Oh, there's a lot of good questions here today. This is crazy. Okay, let's see here. There's usually not, these questions aren't as good. I really appreciate everyone asking such good questions. This is really pretty amazing. There's just a lot of detail. And okay, if firm laid me off in a very vindictive and spiteful way, no severance, no opportunity to look for a job, deny me unemployment, and basically blackmail me, is behaving irrationally and unfairly, what can I do? Can I fight against this? I'm now in a horrible position financially. And in terms of looking for a new position, I'm looking for a new position, but don't know what I can even do. I'm a hardworking associate 6 months in, and my attempts to work for a partner without enough experience to help them backfire when they got frustrated with my inexperience, attacked me and demanded I lose my job. It is outrageous to me that some law firms treat people like this, but I just want to deal with it strategically. Okay, again, so read a message to Garcia. I've talked about that a few times about that. There's a lot of stuff going on here. Sometimes if you work for a young partner, young partners can be very toxic sometimes with associates. I don't know why it's young partners, but a lot of times it is. If the firm is so mad at you, I don't know why that is, but you have to take a look at these 5 reasons to understand that. You have to understand, could you do the work? I don't know. Did they think you were going to be managed? Do they like you? I don't know. It's okay to be mad. One of the things that I've noticed is a lot of times when someone does something wrong, they get very defensive. So this is just an example. It's a personal example, but we have these in-house app developers that did this BCG app on Android and Apple or whatever. And the thing is just, I'm embarrassed of it. It's typos, things don't work. It's just not a good app by any stretch of the imagination. And so we got on a call, or I wasn't there, but our CTO got on a call with the people that had designed in our company last night. And instead of apologizing and things, they just attacked him and said, it's not our fault, even though they're the ones that did all the work. And so that's how a lot of people react when they're in trouble with stuff. So you have to really look at what you did to contribute to that attitude. And instead of saying it's unfair, you need to understand things from their point of view. Now, sometimes this is true. Law firms will act that way because they don't have the money to pay you and they want you to get out. So that could be what happened, possibly, or it could be something that maybe that you did wrong. And so you have to always look at what can I do differently to make sure this doesn't happen. Now, I will say that a lot of people are losing their positions now because of the economy and the things are changing. So that could be what is going on. But no, you don't want to fight back. You don't want to fight back against someone firing you or anything. Your revenge will be getting a better job and being a better attorney. People that sue law firms and things pretty much are blackballed. They don't get hired again. You're not going to be blackballed, especially if it's a large city. But just these kind of problems is something that shouldn't impact your long-term career. Losing a job 6 months in, I lost a job 10 or 11 months in. So you can definitely recover. It's definitely not impossible, and you should recover. Again, if you're 26, 25, you could be practicing till 75. So that's two lifetimes. And just having a bad experience in the beginning is pretty much, it's not something you should worry too much about. Oh, wow. A lot of people losing their job. Let me just see here. There's a lot of questions about that. And I'll answer some more, but for those that I've answered so far, I hope that helps. It's often observed that law firms tend to favor younger attorneys who may require less compensation, and are perceived as having more energy. How can older attorneys effectively counter this bias and highlight their experience as an asset? Okay, older attorneys are, again, it's just how the profession works. It's not like there's descripts. It's the same thing if you want to apply to medical school. If you're in your 50s and want to go to medical school, you're going to have a hard time. But yeah, they favor young attorneys. It's not necessarily because of compensation. It's just because they're going to learn. They're going to look at, these are the things again you have here. So everything comes back to these. So you should always, and there's articles that talk about all these. So if you're older, yes, you can do the work. Will you do the work long term? That's anybody's guess. And then can you be managed? The problem with older attorneys is that they'll be managed by older people, and older people think that they knew everything. And so the older people that think they know everything will often, you may resent it, or you'll come across as resentment. You'll come across lacking the enthusiasm and stuff. You may not seem like you want the job as much because you've done it before, and all these sorts of things that can hurt you. It's not just energy. It's about a lot of other things. So if you approach people and you're basically like, look very manageable and enthusiastic, and like you really want the job, that you're likable, then these are all things that, and that you can do very well. So as long as you get some of these right, you're gonna be in very good shape. This should be green, actually. This sort of a bluish color here. All right, here we go. As long as you do these, now it's not readable, but as long as you do these things, you're gonna be fine. So that's that I would recommend, just making sure that you understand these things. So yeah, law firms, you can get hired when you're older, but it's just much harder is all. Okay, that's the next question. Next question. Thank you, everybody, for asking all these questions. This is a real treat, and there's a lot of very good questions today, and I appreciate it. Let's see. I've heard that some firms may perceive, this is the same question. No, less committed in their careers. I've also faced stereotypes. Older attorneys might not be as open to change or flexible in their approach. How can experienced lawyers demonstrate their dedication to the profession and dispel any misconceptions about their work ethic? So the misconceptions are not just about the fact that this is, again, everything comes back to these. I hate to keep doing this, but the misconceptions are not just about your work ethic. They're about your ability to be managed. They're about whether or not you're going to commit and that sort of thing. So how can you effectively get positions? There's a lot of things you can do. For example, if you're an attorney and you have experience in trials, and you could potentially go to work for a law firm that needs someone to do that, or a small law firm or a solo practitioner. You just have to find people that are going to be open to hiring someone like you, and where you look like someone that will be that they should hire. It is difficult to get a position when you're older, but you just have to find someone that can benefit from you. And if you want to demonstrate your dedication to the profession, there's a lot of things you can do. But in terms of how you work your resume, in terms of how you interview. But again, there is this preconception. The other thing I would recommend doing that I think is very helpful, and I talk about this in the resume when we do resume reviews, but one of the things that a lot of older attorneys do that's not good is they make themselves look kind of all over the place in terms of their practice area and what they do. And so making yourself look very committed to one practice area or doing one thing is going to make you much stronger. So if you do, I don't know what it could be, you could be doing insurance defense. And so instead of just saying you do insurance defense, you might say, I've done trademarks, I've done commercial litigation, I've done all these things. If you look like you're very focused on one practice area, then people are much more likely to hire you and be interested in you than if not. Let me see here. Let's see here. Okay, personally encountered situations where attorneys have faced criticism for being too ambitious, particularly from senior partners who may perceive it as a threat. How can attorneys effectively manage those perceptions while staying true to their career goals? So the example, that's a good question. If you're working for someone, you have to make the person you're working for feel good about themselves. And that means not showing them up. I remember I hired this woman to work for me that had been a partner in a big firm, and she'd been like a service partner, and she was a very senior attorney. And she'd always be like, no one works harder than Harrison, say all these things that were, or no one has a better legal mind than Harrison, things that weren't true. But she was always like flattering me and making people or making me, because she was working for me. So she would do whatever she could to try to make me look good, even though she was very ambitious and trying to win a case and make a lot, and working much harder than I was. So you have to make the people around you look good and not perceive it as a threat. Now, there's one other thing I'm going to talk about briefly that I think was, that I remember was very interesting to me when I was in law school. And people that come out of where I went to law school, which is in Virginia, a lot of them, they do very well. Some of them that go to law firms and I never really understood why, but I was in this apartment complex, and the apartment complex, all of the apartments were on the first floor and there was a second floor, and it was completely crowded with law students. And so almost all the people that were there are law students, and I knew where all the other first year law students lived. But everyone that I went to school, all these people, there was this culture where people were like, oh, I'm not working. I don't really work that hard, a couple hours a day. And I try to get my homework done by 5 and all this sort of thing. And so people and then they would be out playing softball and doing all this stuff and kind of mending together as a group. And it's just a very kind of unusual going out to these parties every Wednesday at the just all this kind of stuff. And I just, wow, that's great. These people aren't working that hard. I was doing the opposite. But anyway, so one time I got this puppy, and my girlfriend and I got this puppy. And so I started getting up like at 1 a.m, 2 a.m, stuff at 3 a.m. to walk this dog, to take him out to go to the bathroom, and he's a puppy. And I would go outside and I would walk around this apartment complex, and all these people that acted like they weren't studying were like up in the middle of the night studying. I was like, wow. So they're not showing that they're to be likable and things. They're trying to not show people that they're studying harder and they're more competitive and things. And I just always thought that was really interesting. That's how that went, because it's almost like a social type thing where you want to make the people feel good about themselves. And so you can, the people that are very ambitious often won't show the ambition. They'll keep it under wraps, and then the ambition only can come out later but you need to not look like you're ambitious. And I think I learned that kind of lesson when I was at school, because I saw everyone, and I don't know why that happened that way. I don't know if that school is unusual, but I thought that was very interesting. That people were liking that. And a lot of these people became very successful. And one of them is, I think, the head of DLA Piper now or something, and several others. Another one I know, partner, and very successful. So I think the idea is you can be ambitious, but you make other people look good. And at the same time, you don't show other people your ambition because you want them to like you and so forth. That's what I have to teach on that, and probably a lot more. I've taken a break from law practice to work in-house at a corporation. How can I highlight the skills and experience gained during this time to make myself more appealing to law firms? So the problem with going in-house is everyone knows what working a great firm like Milbank or something means. Everyone knows. So there's no secret. It's just people know what it is, but no one knows what working at Stripe, which I guess is a credit card processing or something, Stripe means. It's every in-house company has different qualifications. They go through different people. They give them different work. People have different responsibilities. So it's just, once you've done that, there's nothing that really shows. There's nothing, if you work in project finance at Milbank or bankruptcy or one of these major practice areas that they do, everyone knows the exact type of work you're doing. There's no question. If you start going in-house, there's questions about your hours. There's questions about your supervision. There's questions about the quality of work you do. There's all these questions. And sometimes most people in-house, by the way, I'm not saying you're in this position, but what happens is companies hire people to work in-house because first of all, they need the work, but they also believe they're saving money by hiring people to work in-house because they don't have to pay higher hourly rates, and they'll hire people that know what they're doing and all that sort of stuff. So if you go to work in-house, what most people do is they start off interested to do the work, but then they learn that most of the work they can refer out to law firms, and they want to cover their ass because they'd rather the law firm make a mistake than they do. And so you become an expert in doing that. There's just all sorts of problems sometimes when you go in-house. Now, I'm not saying that's always the case, but law firms don't necessarily dig it too much. And it's very hard to get hired when you go in-house. I used to try very hard. I'd see someone that was like in-house in the Bay Area and went to Stanford and worked at a great firm like Wilson Sonsini or whatever. And then I would try to get them a position, and no one would bite. Whereas if they were in a law firm, everybody would. Law firms really do have and I remember I've gotten those people interviews and gotten the jobs before, but it's 10 times harder. And so the problem with once you go in-house is, again, the same thing. Here's what they're thinking. They're wondering about when you go in-house, they're wondering, look at that, it's a 1. Look at that. So they're wondering if you can do the work, like you still have the skills, because you may have been referring work out to other people. So they're worried about that. They're worried about whether you're going to commit, because you've already shown that you may not want to work in a law firm. They're worried about how much you really want the job, because why would you want to go back to a law firm after being in-house? They're also worried about you being able to be managed, but you're 3 out of 5 in these, so that's part of the problem. And so, if you were a law firm, you would think the same way. So how do you highlight your skills and experience to make yourself more appealing? There was this guy that was in-house not too long ago. I'm not going to say what office he was at, but he worked so hard and was such a good law firm that this just awesome law firm, I mean, I'd like to say their name, but I don't want to anyway. But this great law firm one of the top law firms in the world, hired him because he was in-house and working so hard and showing what a great job he could do. They hired him to work for them. And so what does that mean? Why did they do that? They did that because they saw he was committed and all these things. He really could work. He would commit. All these things. So that's what you do, is you do that. The problem with in-house attorneys, I don't want to get too far into the details with this, but the in-house resume often looks like, so law firms thrive by having specialties. So this is one of the things that I want to make sure. This is actually very important for anyone that's in-house. So thrive by having specialties. You go there and someone will be an expert in M&A or whatever, life sciences, patent prosecution, whatever. So they'll be an expert in something. And that's actually, that's good for clients, because the clients get an expert. The person's more efficient with their time. They're more likely to be good at all sorts of things. The problems with people that go in-house, and this is actually, I want to make this point for everyone, because this is what screws people up in their resumes. I give these resume talks all the time. The thing that people do wrong is always the same thing with in-house. In-house wants to say, they'll say, I do everything. They'll say, I do everything. They'll say, I've done M&A. I do general corporate. I manage litigation. I manage litigation. Let me say corporate. Manage litigation. I work on, they're just all these different things. And then many times they'll start their resume off with this like paragraph about how they do all these different things. Well, that's the exact opposite. It's ass backwards of what a law firm wants. So if you want to get a job from going in-house in a law firm, you need to look like you're a specialist of some sort, because no one wants to hire general. Law firms aren't the attorneys in them, unless they're like, in some cases, they can be generalists. So if you're a law firm in Omaha, Nebraska, actually a smaller town than Omaha. But if you're in a small town of like a 200,000 or whatever, 300,000, not a mid-sized market, you may have corporate attorney, may be a corporate generalist. They may do a little bit of this and that because the clients aren't huge. But in most cases, law firms have specialties. So anytime you do a job where you're not a specialist, that's going to hurt you. And that's the biggest thing that people do that are in-house that hurts them, that want to go back in law firms. If you want to go back in a law firm, it's very important that you look like a specialist. Okay, let's see here. This is a question where I could get in a lot of trouble, so I have to be careful. As a female attorney, I've faced challenges related to the expectations of wearing makeup and adhering to traditional beauty standards. How can women in the legal field strike a balance between conforming to these expectations and asserting their professionalism? What you're saying is actually the opposite from what I experienced when I was practicing law. When I worked at Quinn & Manning, for example, I guess some of them might wear makeup, but it certainly wasn't something that was expected. Now, I'm assuming because of your question, you probably work somewhere like some awesome firm in the East Coast or something in New York. And New York is completely different than the West Coast. So is Chicago to some extent. Because I love New York. I was just there, and the restaurants are great. People dress up for dinner. It's just it's pretty cool. And there's a lot of great things about it. So how do you strike a balance between that and a certain professionalism? Men are expected to wear a suit coat when they go out to certain things. And I don't know about the makeup thing. I would say you want to portray yourself in the best possible way. And I don't know if that means wearing makeup or whatever. But I think if you are likable and competent, I don't think that stuff really matters that much. I think that you need to think like how a man thinks. So if a man's going out, to meet a client, he's expected to, depending on the location of the country, but if it's in a New Yorkie type place, he's expected to wear decent shoes and decent slacks and a coat and pressed shirt. It's the same thing with men. So I'm just talking about men now. And if you can take that example and apply it to women, it's probably the same thing. Men are used to be clean shaven. I don't know if that applies as much anymore, but if you have a beard, it should be trimmed. You should keep your hair cut. I remember, this is just a funny example. I had this candidate once that was, and I was first in his class from UCLA or something. Like, what the hell? Like, awesome. And he got hired at a New York office of Los Angeles, a Bay Area office like Palo Alto or something, of a big New York law firm to do IP litigation. I think he also had like a PhD in physics or something from Caltech or something crazy. And then he got there and he decided that he was going to grow his hair long. And when he grew his hair long, 3 or 4 years in, like his hair came down to his buttocks, and he started doing things like also not shaving and just this was who he wanted to be. And so I don't know what happened. He lost his job, or the firm maybe closed their office or something. It wasn't because he was doing bad work, and he needed a job. And everyone interviewed him without question. Every place we sent him, they interviewed him. And every place he went, after he walked in the door, if they had 3 interviews planned, it was only one, and they told him to go home. But no place would hire him, just no place. And after 5 or 6 episodes of this, he started going into firms, and he was just like devastated. And then he came to visit me. I flew him down from the Bay Area to come to my office. He was crying and upset. He did the same in interviews. He had no self-confidence. And I don't know what the hell happened to him, but I told him, you've got to cut your hair and you've got to do this and that. And he just refused. And again, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with him being the person he wanted to be, but that level was really a shame. And so you have to be very careful about how you portray yourself. And I'm going to use the example of men because I don't want to be look like I'm sexist or something, but there's an expectation of men. And so women, of course, have similar expectations. And I don't know exactly what that is. I'm not the kind of person, by the way, that would ever tell women like how they should dress or what they would do. And I've actually I don't think I've ever been around men that have in that sort of situation that says, oh, this person's not dressed properly, but maybe. Okay, let's see. I've heard anecdotes of attorneys being judged. This is a good question for having tattoos or unconventional hairstyles. How can legal professionals choose to express themselves through their appearance and navigate potential biases without compromising their identity? Okay, so this is a funny story. When I was clerking, I went out I flew out to Los Angeles when I was realizing, when I essentially was losing my job as a clerk. And I flew out to Los Angeles, and the first firm I interviewed with was a firm called Heller Ehrman. And they had people that were great qualifications. They were like clerks and went to these great law schools, and it's just awesome. And so I got in this, and I was, by the way, coming from Michigan. And so I'd been in Michigan where, professionally there weren't a lot of tattoos. And then I worked in New York where there weren't a lot of tattoos. And so I walked into this Los Angeles office of Heller Ehrman, and they started taking me around to these different offices to interview. And some of the men had like leather pants and like were wearing T-shirts with tattoos, and they had these like cigarettes on their desks that I remember were these kind of off brands like Spirit and stuff. And I think, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, but most of them were gay. And I'd never seen people dress like this. I'd never seen people with tattoos in a law firm. And this was a long time ago. I mean, we're talking like, I don't know, 20 plus years ago. So this is how it is. There are law firms where there's absolutely nothing wrong with having tattoos or how you dress or you're in any of this stuff. You can go to them. And when I didn't get a job at Heller Ehrman, they called and they said, I don't think it's a good cultural fit for you, and it would be better for you if you didn't work here or something, which was a nice thing to say. But at the same time, you can be the person you want anywhere you work. A lot of attorneys in big firms in LA these days have tattoos. There's nothing wrong with having tattoos. I mean, if you want to put them on your arms, by your wrist, that may be a problem for you if you're trying to talk to clients and things, if you don't wear a long sleeve shirt. But I think you need to be the person you want to be. And what I'm saying by all this is every type of place you'd want to work, there's a place for you. So you can be the person you want to be and express yourself the way you want, but you just have to find the right environment. And it may be another town, another market. It may be with a certain type of people. But you can definitely have long hair and be whatever you want to be, or have tattoos or nose earrings or whatever. You can do all that, and it doesn't mean you're compromising your identity. You just have to find the people where that works. And sometimes when you find the people where that works, they're going to like you and support you as well, because that's who they are. So you have to find people that are similar to you. When I was at that firm, interviewing with that firm, where everyone had that was their identity. I couldn't believe it. I was shocked. I'd never seen anything like it. And this, again, was coming from the Midwest and having worked in New York. But you can really be whatever you want to be. And you just have to find the right environment. And sometimes it means getting out of a market that's very conservative or whatever. I was in a situation where I was pulled into a bunch of labor trials without any experience for the labor board, with minimal supervision. I had very few early successes, but blew a deadline when a partner gave me an inaccurate deadline, and I did not catch this until it was too late. The partner went berserk and came after me, and I lost my job. I was doing multiple legal matters in other trials. I was green at all this as a first-year attorney. There were other things I missed, or that someone with more experience would not have. Okay. Ultimately, despite these rough edges, I managed to get our motions granted initially, but I lost my job when the other partner came after me. Another partner offered to take me off other matters to prioritize their work from my branch office, and I turned down the offer, and I reassured them I had covered not wanting to work week. Working 10, 12-hour days was not enough, and I wish I had taken an upper offer, wish I had done differently. Again, I wasn't there, so I can't necessarily answer that. But it sounds like you were given work and didn't take it. Let me tell you an example of something that I saw. I was talking not too long ago to a woman in a major law firm that was like 10 or 11 years in. And when she was in 8th year, had been asked to do some project or something. And even though she could have done it, or she told them that she, for whatever reason, she didn't want to work with a certain partner, I don't know what it was, that she didn't have the time or couldn't do it right now. And then they realized that she could. Now, this is an extreme example, and I don't want to freak anyone out. But then she was in her 11th year, and they kept giving her good reviews, telling her she was a practicum partner or counselor or whatever. And then they suddenly brought up this fact where they asked her to do some work and she didn't. And that was her death knell. And this woman had been at the firm for a long time. Now, I'm not saying that all firms are this crazy. And certainly if they liked her better, they probably wouldn't have said that. But it's important, if someone gives you work, then to try to take it. That's the most important thing you can do. If you say yes and you're always saying yes, you have to work on your time. But it's very common when young attorneys to make all sorts of mistakes. They don't understand everything, and you learn on the job. It doesn't mean that you're a bad attorney. It just means you have to learn procedures and how things work. And it's especially true with litigation. When I was litigating, I made some crazy mistakes, and I was able to fix them. But you just have to realize that these are the mistakes, and you do. And everyone makes those mistakes. The problem is people make mistakes in different ways. So if you make a mistake for someone that really likes you, that you have a good relationship with and you respect, they're not going to fly off the handle. They'll fly off the handle if they don't like you. You have to find people you have to do work for people that like you, and make sure that you don't upset, and then those people will help you. So people don't want to penalize people that they like. Most people that get hurt with this kind of stuff are people that, for whatever reason, the law firm doesn't like them. So just think about it from the law firm's point of view. The law firm knows that someone's green and doesn't know what they're doing and is going to make mistakes. And the only reason a partner is going to freak out is if they think, here's kind of how it works. I'll explain to you a little bit of the dynamic that happens at most firms. I'm not saying you had this happen, but the dynamic is when a partner is working on a case, a lot of times it's not their client. So the partner, it's some other partner's client. So a lot of times these are junior attorneys, or they might be mid-level attorneys, partners without a lot of business. And so some other partner is giving them work to do. So they are freaked out and need to do a really good job on that in order for the partner to continue to get more work. So the partner is giving you work to do, who may not be their client. And if you make a mistake, it's actually not considered your mistake. It's considered the partner's mistake. And so the partner is very worried about upsetting the partner that gave him the work, because obviously if you made that mistake, it looks like you're more well supervised and so forth. So if that happens, then the partner will just basically throw you under the bus and say you were horrible and all this stuff happened, and you make up all these stories so they keep the partner that gave them the work happy. So this dynamic, I don't know if this would happen to you. That's the dynamic. The other thing to keep in mind is anyone that loses their job at a young age, you have to understand that if the law firm lets you go, they have a lot of time and money spent that they're going to have to use to get someone new. They're going to have to interview people, which takes time. They're going to have to, so you have to be so a law firm, you have to really, if you're losing your job, they either don't have the work or you really upset someone. So you just have to be careful. There's nothing wrong with losing a job early on, by the way. A lot of attorneys, like very successful, who lost jobs 5-6 times as partners, as associates. Just losing your job is just a learning lesson. It may make it harder for you to get another job, but you should be able to. And you just have to learn lessons from all this. Let me see. This is another question. A lot of people today are writing stuff about losing their jobs. And I will say that I'm surprised, because I review resumes every day. And I will tell you that you are absolutely not alone. I'm seeing an incredible number of resumes, like more than I've ever seen, even in like .com bust, 2008, 9. I'm seeing a lot of tons of resumes of people that have lost their jobs, big firms and small firms, and it's way more than normal. So I'm just letting you know that everyone, you're not alone. This is happening a lot. I think most of it is financially driven. It's not that you're a bad attorney, but that's all I would say. And by the way, all these mistakes you're making, everyone does these kind of things. It's every young attorney does. No, some don't, but most do. Okay, if a law firm that terminated you is not meeting its legal obligations, separation notice to qualify for unemployment, final paycheck, or other reimbursements promised, what can I do to look out for myself, and how hard do I have to push on this? Why would a law firm create these kind of problems for me? Is it going to harm me if I have an attorney demand a law firm meet its obligations, or do I just walk away? So yeah, you can certainly call an attorney to pressure them to pay you or to do things correctly. I think when you file a lawsuit, that's a little bit different. But all these things, separation notice, there's also, I don't know what state you're in, but in California, there's all these laws where they don't do something on time, there's trouble damages, you get paid 3 times and all these things. I don't know that you need an attorney to do that. But if the law firm did all these things, just from an employment perspective, they're in the wrong. So there's nothing wrong with you pressuring them and asking them to do all these things. You're not suing them for harassment or unlawful termination. You're just asking them for things that they're supposed to do. So I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that. If I was you, I would not have done that when I was younger, because I wouldn't have known about it, or I would have been afraid. But I think that, that's perfectly fine. Everyone that does that sort of thing I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I've had people do that with me over things I didn't even realize. Okay, so there's another question. I wonder if smaller firms might be interested in if a person with deep experience in a unique practice area with specific value proposition related to growing area, despite exhibiting a non-entrepreneurial spirit, wants. I can't tell this. Entrepreneurial. Okay, yeah. So smaller firms are always interested in people. So the nice thing about smaller firms is a lot of people, they're not getting a lot of applications. You don't necessarily need to apply to the firm online or anything like that. You not apply to a job. You actually need to find them. And if you have a deep experience, unique practice area, yeah, then smaller law firms will hire you. There are so many of them out there. Like I showed earlier, just doing a search on Google for that practice area in a city, you're going to find a lot. Yeah, smaller law firms would be interested in someone like that. Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of good questions. I'm just very impressed by the questions people are asking. This is just awesome. Yeah, how does a 6-year associate who shows up but does not have a book, the business still got ahead in big law? Yeah, so that's a good question. So as a 6-year associate in big law, so big law is a little different than a lot of cases. So there's non-equity income partners, and then there's equity partners. So I'm not, again, I don't know what firm you're at or how you're thinking about it, but so non-equity income partners are basically often made by hours, commitment, quality of work, or support from powerful partners, let me make this very clear, with a lot of work. So most law firms, you can become a partner by getting work from by doing these things. And even if it's an equity partnership and you don't get as much money as you can, if you have support from powerful partners with a lot of clients, I say a lot of clients, well, with a lot of, I'll just say work clients. So if you're able to do that, then this is how you get it done. But you have to align yourself with people that have the most business and have the most power. And if you do that, then you typically will often, most of the time, if that person is in the power, be advanced. So that's one way you do it. Now, what do the most successful people do? And I'm just going to tell you because it's important to understand. So I know this guy that's got a $7 million a year guarantee at a Midwestern firm in terms of his take-home pay because he's got so much, excuse me, I don't know what my voice is. Maybe he doesn't like talking about him, but excuse me. Anyway, he's got such a huge book of business that it's incredible. Of course, I was very interested, like, how did this guy get so much business? And he's young. He's in his early 40s. And, what he did when he started is he was like, okay, I'm going to bill as a third or fourth year. I'm going to bill 2,500 hours a year in terms of my billing. I'm going to spend another 2,500 hours a year looking for clients and just going out and meeting with businesses and things. And it worked. And so is that something everyone can do? No. But anybody that wants to get ahead like that can figure out some sort of strategy if they're hungry enough. Now, I'm not saying that's what you should do. I think the best path is really if I was you, to align myself with the partners with the most work, do the best possible work you can for them, and then they can advance you. That's typically, and then you become a non-equity partner and do that. Or you can go the road of trying to get the business, which obviously isn't the easiest thing to do, but that's what I would do. Okay, this is a good question. So I'm going to answer this one. This is actually a very common type question. So I'm going to make sure I cover this. So you mentioned firms prefer to hire younger attorneys than those who have worked for fewer firms. Do you have any advice you would give to attorneys who work as a contractor for a handful of firms consistently, going back to the same firm and practice groups because of good work product, but is looking for full-time employment rather than a contractor? Yeah, so a lot of people do this. I know an attorney that retired, he lived very frugally, and he worked as a contract attorney. He went to UCLA and did really well there in law school. And then he's some guy that got like a 174 or something, a really smart guy in his LSATs, and never wanted to work in a law firm. He always just worked as a contractor. So you can do very well as a contractor and you can make good money. But the problem being a contractor is this is basically you have to worry about these questions. And I always keep coming back to these questions. There's a lot that I've written on BCG that tells about these questions and why they're important. But I don't know what I did wrong here. But the idea is if you're working as a contractor, you may not want a full-time job. People do work as contractors so they can have the flexibility, or maybe they couldn't get a job. I don't know, but people do it for a reason. If you're working as a contractor and you want to get back into a full-time position, you have to figure out a way to do that. And typically and I'll just be honest with you, it's happened. I've seen it happen, but not, again, I'm talking about a 25-year career here. of reviewing resumes, hours a day. It rarely happens at the same caliber of firm that you are at. So because there's just a presumption that, I don't know, that if you're willing to work as a contractor, why should we hire you as a full-time attorney? If you're a contractor, you may not be committed. If you're a contractor, you may not be doing as good a work because you're not getting exposed to work at the same level. If you may not want the job. So all these questions, you may not be able to be managed because you've never had a permanent position. So all these questions become things that the law firm thinks about. And so you're really SOL. So what do? You find a smaller firm or another firm where you can get a position doing that type of work, and you prove yourself and you get clients, or you work hard and then you move to a better firm or whatever. Like, you can do it. You have to just figure out what you're going to do. But you have to realize if you are working as a contractor, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to get into a major firm again, just because of that, because of those things. All right, back. So let me get to the next question here. There are a lot of really good questions. Okay, so there's a question from a partner, which I think I like. I like this one that was a law firm. How can law firms ensure that compensation structures don't necessarily inadvertently incentivize attorneys to prioritize billable hours or client satisfaction, legal ethics? If a law firm is billing by the hour, then there's always an incentive for attorneys to prioritize billable hours. So I don't over client satisfaction, legal ethics. These are all good questions. I will tell you that when I worked I'm not going to even say where I worked, but I mean, there are attorneys that certainly will pad their hours pretty aggressively. So that's just how it works a lot of times. But in terms of incentivizing attorneys to prioritize billable hours, it's really the job of a partner who their client is to make sure that the attorney's not billing too much and that stuff's not going well. So it's really, when a partner is supervising the work, it's really their role to review billable hours and what the person's working on, rather than the attorney. So if someone's looking at an associate's hours and they look too high, the partner will always knock them down. So that's something to think about in terms of how that works. I don't know if that's a great answer, but in most cases, it's the partner's role to look at make sure the hours are not too much, to write them down if they can, to talk to the associate if the associate's billing too much. And by the way, I've never seen any law. I mean, I've never witnessed a partner coming to an associate and telling them they billed too much. It may happen, but it's funny. But okay, here's another good question. I will answer this one. Some of these look like they're repeats of the same, but I'm going to. Okay, I feel they made interpersonal mistakes you indicated despite checking off all the other boxes. I worked a ton of hours, networked with partners to get constant work and sophisticated work, picked up on the materials and got great experience. But when a partner came after me in an unfair way, I got defensive, perhaps a little mistake. Other partners in my branch office did not back me up, and I went from being on the rise to being told I had a lot of potential and winning lots of matters to out of a job. If partners are perceiving me as difficult to manage or defensive, what did I overlook and how can I fix this? And will I even have the opportunity to work at a law firm again? I've now lost 2 positions in my first 2 years of practice. The first was explainable for business reasons. The firm laid off all the associates. This time I was not short on work. I love working in the firm and in the practice areas, but I don't know how to move forward from here. Okay, so this can be a lot of these questions, and this is obviously you're concerned, but a lot of these questions are just people are getting in trouble working for people who don't like them and they get on the wrong side of things. And so I guess I'll just, this is because there's a lot of these questions and I don't want to keep, each of them has individual things to go along with them. There's different reasons, but really what I guess I can say and what a lot of it comes down to is there's soldiers and there's generals. So a soldier's job is to do whatever is asked, not question orders, respect superiors, and die for them if necessary. I mean, I'm sorry, but this is how it works. And then then people become generals. Generals are first soldiers and the best soldiers, and that follow orders, all this stuff, that do all this stuff. So this is what a soldier is. This is how a soldier becomes a general. So the biggest mistake that everyone's here is talking about, and then generals give orders. etc. So just all you need to do to really learn about any of this is this is how it works. It's not just, I'm not making this analogy for to say, but if you watch a war movie and you'll see this, but this is what a soldier is supposed to do. So if you're in the Army and you're a soldier and someone tells you to go do something and you get defensive or whatever, then they're not going to like that. How can a country function if soldiers are all getting defensive and overreacting? Everyone has to follow orders. This is the biggest mistake that all associates make. It's a mistake that, not all associates, but it's a mistake that gets people in trouble, is they start not acting like a soldier and acting like a general. So again, a lot of these questions, I really encourage you to read this, A Message to Garcia on, it's not something I wrote, it's basically me just introducing it and talking about it, on harrisonbarnes.com. So read that. It's going to help you. It's going to show you the way you need to act. And this is what people get in trouble for. I got in trouble for it when I was young. Everybody does. So you need to be a soldier. You soldier before you're a general. It doesn't matter where you went to school. It doesn't matter whatever. And you become a general by being a good soldier and impressing generals. So I'm just looking at these questions. I don't know if you can see my screen. Sorry. So I don't want to show people's names. So I'm just making sure I see all these questions. I think I've answered most of the questions. There's one other, it looks like it's something I've answered, but a lot of these are the same question. So let me just see here. Okay, so I'm just answering some of these because I'm looking to see. Sorry, just give me a second. I'm looking at another screen. I don't want to show people what I'm looking at. So, okay, so yeah, this is a lot of the same. Look, I don't know if it's the same person asking it, but it's a lot of the same questions over and over again. And I think I'll finish with this. What everyone that's having these problems, getting fired, getting interpersonal problems with partners, the idea is that a lot of people come out and they're headstrong, especially young attorneys. They think they know a lot of stuff. They know everything. And the idea is that what makes you successful is being really a good follower, taking orders, doing what people ask you to do, being a really good soldier and making the people above you feel respected, doing the best you can, being their advocate, having their back, all those sorts of things. You need to be a good soldier. So I'll just close with when I was practicing law, I would always, with people above me, and I didn't, even when I worked for this judge, I used to go and, I noticed that he went up to this place and picked up his mail every morning. And I was like, I'll do this for you. So I started getting to work for him and getting his mail and just doing things for people that shows that you respect them, that are senior to you. And so the better off you do with that, I think the better off you're generally going to be. So you want to make sure that you respect people that are above you, that you don't question them, that you're not defensive, that you give everything you have, and you basically give them the idea that you're going to do whatever it takes to help them be successful. And then a final thing that I'll just end with that I think a lot of people oftentimes don't understand. So when you're working for a partner, just imagine that as an outside client that's paying you $700 an hour, right? And that's an outside client you're working for that's paying you $700 an hour. So, not only that, but the client is watching you and very careful and stuff. So you need to act like that partner is your client. And that means you can't be defensive. It means if they see you made a mistake, you're like, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. And you make it up to them and you do all these sorts of things so you can keep the client. So that's how you need to think about the people you're working for. And you need to realize that everybody wants to feel important. So as a person that goes to a great law school or as a new attorney, you want to feel like you're a big deal and important. Someone else wants to feel important. The person you're working for is the most important to feel important. So they've spent all this time becoming an attorney. They've become a partner. They've worked for maybe 10 years to become a partner, and then they get business. They deserve your respect. They've done a lot more than you have at this point in your career. So you need to respect them and learn from them and appreciate it. The other thing that people don't realize too, that's really nice is that, and I'll just say this because I know there's a lot of young attorneys on this call, but when you're taking a job as an associate in a law firm, you should not worry about money. You shouldn't worry about your benefits because really what you're getting is training. And the training is the most important thing. Like you're getting trained by someone that knows how to do this instead of having to learn it all on your own. And that training is going to make you successful in the long run. So that's really the point I would give to you. And you should be glad. You should treat them like like a professor in school or something. You should respect them. You don't talk back to professors that are going to give you grades. You do everything you possibly can to impress them. So that's something I just would recommend, a way to thinking about it. All right. Yeah. So I think that's that. And I appreciate everyone being here, and I look forward. And I do appreciate all these questions. They were really awesome questions today. And I will talk to everyone next week. So thanks again. Bye.